Okay, we'll call the meeting to order, and as always, start with the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you, and I'm going to briefly turn the meeting over to Director De La Cruz.
Thank you, President Close. I just wanted to ground us for a moment in what's happening in our world right now, and to take a moment of silence for Angie Valeria Martinez and for Oscar Alberto Martinez, who drowned on the 24th trying to come to this country, trying to make sure that their daughter was educated in American schools, to live a life that we have the privilege of living in this country. So if you just join me for a second in giving thanks for our lives and mourning theirs. Que en paz descansen. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay. Reporting actions taken in closed session. The board voted unanimously to approve a settlement in existing case number OAH number 201-8080461. Into C3, items considered in closed session for action in open session. I need a motion on stipulated expulsion case 18-19-44.
I move that we accept the stipulated expulsion 18-19-44.
Second.
Moved by Director Fong, second by Director McCormick. Roll call vote, please.
Dr. Fong? Aye. Dr. McCormick?
Aye.
Director De La Cruz?
Aye.
Director Manieri?
Aye.
Director Sheffield? President Close?
Aye. Motion carries. I need a motion on stipulated expulsion case number, oh, I'm sorry. Omar, you're right in front of me and I forgot about you. I'm sorry. Aye. Okay, motion carries. We'll move to stipulated expulsion 18-19-42.
I move that we accept stipulated expulsion 18-19-42.
Second.
Moved by Director Fong, second by Director McCormick. Roll call vote, please.
Director Fong?
Aye.
Director McCormick? Aye. Director De La Cruz?
I'm going to go vote against this one. No. Is this a Carrillo case? No. That was the first one. Okay. Aye.
Director Manieri?
Aye.
Director Sheffield? Director Medina?
Director Medina?
Aye.
President Close?
Aye. Motion carries. Needed a motion on 18-19-45.
I move to accept and move forward the stipulated expulsion 18-19-45.
Second.
Moved by Director Fong, second by Director McCormick. Roll call vote, please.
Director Fong? Aye. Director McCormick? Aye. Director De La Cruz?
Aye.
Director Manieri?
Aye.
Director Sheffield?
Aye.
Director Medina?
Aye.
President Close?
Aye. Motion carries. Okay. Statements of abstention, C4. Any? Seeing none, we'll go to C5, adjustments to the agenda. I have several. Does anyone have any to add to the, well, I'll go with mine. We're pulling E2. On the E5 item, we're pulling one contract off of that off of that agenda item for non-action, so will not be part of the motion. That's the Strawbridge contract. Then we're going to pull E6 and E7 for public comment and E18 for public comment. Any others? Okay. C6, board member request for information. Seeing none. Omar, anything?
No.
Okay, C7, approval of minutes for the regular board meeting held on June 12th, 2019.
I move for the approval of minutes of the regular board meeting held on June 12th, 2019.
Second.
Moved by Director Manieri, seconded by Director Sheffield. Roll call vote, please.
Director Manieri?
Aye.
Director Sheffield?
Aye.
Director De La Cruz?
Aye.
Director Fong?
Abstain.
Director McCormick?
Aye.
Director Medina?
Aye.
President Close?
Aye. Motion carries. Okay, and that brings us to a happier moment. C8, special presentations for Carlos Cepeda and Superintendent.
Yes, if I could get Vice Principal Correa to come down, and Carlos, if you just want to stand right there for a second, this will be fine. We have a special presentation tonight for one of our graduates from Pioneer High School. His name is, he's standing right there, Carlos Cepeda. And the reason, yay! And the reason, and Mom and Grandma, if you guys want to move up forward so you can kind of take pictures from this side, please feel free to do so. The reason we're having this special presentation is that because Carlos has worked extremely hard to graduate from high school. And there was actually a bit of an error in the fact that he did complete the units to graduate, but it was mistakenly told to him that he did not have the credits to walk during graduation. So that's why we're doing this. And I wanted to give Carlos and his family, first of all, a recognition, either here or at a special graduation for some of our seniors who are finishing up in summer school. And his family chose to do this tonight. And so first and foremost, Carlos, I want to apologize on behalf of our staff that that error occurred. But I also want to move on, and I want you to go forth from now with this diploma to do all the wonderful things that I know you're going to do. And so with that, we're going to play a little bit of music. So come on down, Carlos.
Close, the current school board president, and your mom emailed me, and I have to say some magic words for you to actually go through the graduation, but I'm going to get to those. And first, I want to say, where's Mom? But hi, nice to meet you. Okay, you can go back and do your mom videotaping. I'm sure you want to do. But I want to say, first, I want to thank you for advocating for your son and sending me this great email, and thank you for the superintendent for making this happen. And I want to just say that first person in her family to graduate from high school. And now the second. Well, just a second. Almost now the second. These are the magic words. They're the most boring magic words you'll ever hear, ever. But these are them. Faculty members, graduates, friends, and family, on behalf of the San Jose City Schools Board of Education, it is a pleasure to accept the graduation class of 2019, the graduation class of one in this situation. I note that he has met the state and local requirements of the receipt of a diploma from Pioneer High School. As a board member, it is my duty and pleasure to certify that Carlos Cepeda has completed his course of study. Therefore, Vice Principal Andrea Correa is directed to issue Carlos Javier Hernandez Cepeda his diploma of graduation. Congratulations.
And here's a little gift from Amazon.
Our favorite boutique store.
Okay, we're going to take a 5-minute break so families can take pictures, and there's cookies for you.
For the people in the AV room, we're going to take a 5-minute break so families can take pictures, and we'll be back. Okay, I'm going to call the meeting back to order. Sorry, Omar, if that's gavel's loud, and I'll try to mute that gavel next time. That, it's all good. It's probably not. Okay, so moving to C9, public comment on non-agenda items. I have blue cards here, but they seem to be all for E items, and so I don't have any blue cards for they're E18 and E2. Okay, so this opportunity for the public to address the board on items not on the agenda tonight. Does anyone have an item not on the agenda tonight to discuss? Okay. We need the Cisco hold music.
They should probably use separate e-cards for all of those. Those are F items, E6 and 7, E18.
Okay.
We have a lot for F4, but they did F5. So
Okay, if you,
she might
was
be saying
Tammy.
She might be saying the same thing.
So all of these are for agendized items, and so we will move on to reports. CSEA, President Alfonso.
Okay. Good evening. Tammy Alfonso, CSEA Chapter 75 President. Good evening, President Close, Superintendent Dr. Kitamura, school board members, and no student board member. My report tonight is short, as I'm going to speak on other items on the agenda later. We would like to congratulate Debbie Marvel on her promotion to Secretary 3 position at Santa Rosa High School. We say happy retirement to Susan Badger, 12 years and 6 months of classified service to Santa Rosa City Schools. We also say goodbye to 4 employees who have resigned at this time, representing 3+ years of service, and wish them the best in their future employment. Thank you.
Thank you. SRTA, President Lyon.
Good evening, President Close, Dr. Kitamura, and members of the board. I'm William Lyon, I'm the president of Santa Rosa Teachers Association, representing over 900 educators in our district. I want to appreciate, I don't know who exactly, but I know that the district joined SRTA in making an outsized effort to celebrate Pride this year. Specifically, want to thank you for posting the Pride flag at the district office. You may notice some of our Pride shirts. Who's got the Pride shirt on there? Those turned out really nice. I'd also like to thank Rebecca Talk for leading our LGBTQ caucus. She was fantastic at it, and she's going to be leaving us, and I miss her already, but she's done a great job in helping SRTA learn how to be allies. So thank you for that. I want to mention that it came out since the last school board meeting that Santa Rosa is the 5th most expensive city in the nation for teachers. I was surprised by that. I knew things were tough. I didn't know we were the 5th most expensive city. We come in after San Francisco, San Jose, Santa Cruz, Honolulu, and number 5 is Santa Rosa. The metrics on that were median price for homes, which have absolutely nothing to do with school board decisions or teacher decisions or labor management negotiations, but the other side of that is teacher pay. So that's really concerning for us, which leads me to my next bullet point. Director Sheffield mentioned leading on a parcel tax. And so we haven't had a discussion yet since the last time that it came around with, well, let me back up. I had a very short discussion with Dr. Kitamura about it. We didn't make any agreements, just sort of, hey, where are you at on it? So we've had very little movement on our end of it. I'm concerned about that because I cannot envision a scenario where a parcel tax passes or a bond or anything like that without robust support from teachers. And in order to do that, we have to have a conversation with teachers. We have to give them a look at it. There's time in the process that has to do that. And I've had members that have expressed concerns about a parcel tax. So I'd like to open an invitation for Director Sheffield to meet with me at some point to start talking about it, and perhaps invite you to come and speak to our members at our exec board retreat or at an early rep council, so that we can talk about what it would take to get one passed, what the pathway would be to do that. So I open that invitation. Lastly, I'm going to speak to it now because my William Penn Lyon the 7th is here. He's busy. He's conquering the world one zombie at a time. Hey, here he is. William is an uprising 4th grader at Proctor Terrace. And so I'm going to be going home with him. I may or may not still be here when it comes to it, but I want to mention that for income equality reasons, SRTA is opposed to the raise for the superintendent because while it's come down from the original offer, it's still 2.5 times more than what teachers got, and it's not equitable. So you've seen the numbers, you've seen what we've had to say about it. I'll leave it there, but I know that we're gonna have speakers on it. It's very concerning to us that when we made an offer, William's not concerned, he's very cute though, that when we made our first offer, the offer was countered to 1%. And that whatever offer was made from the superintendent, it was countered up to 29%. So when we say, when we hear that we're worth 1% and the superintendent's worth 29, and then then we negotiate, do the thing, and it goes from 7 to 18.5 over 2, it feels to the teachers like you want us to work for the least amount that you can give us. And it feels like you want to give the most amount possible to the superintendent, and it just doesn't feel right. That's not intended to be a rebuke on the superintendent. We recognize that it's an extremely hard job. We saw the job description and you read through that and you go, yikes, that is an awful lot of work. We're not saying that she shouldn't make the salary that she's making, that we're saying that everybody is below the state average except for her. If we're looking to improve pay across the district, we should raise all boats at the same time. And I'll leave it there for that. Thank you very much.
Okay, D3 Labor Management Collaborative Report.
There's no report this evening.
D4 Superintendent Report.
Thank you, President Close. I'd like to start off with, I'm going to ask Assistant Superintendent Spector to bring up on this, does the screen work? Is it working? Okay. There has been some discussion about retirements, resignations, and so we're in the process of developing a board report based on the request of the board, but we do have some preliminary information that we wanted to share tonight. So I'm going to turn it over to my time over to Assistant Superintendent to just show us a glimpse of the data for the last, looks like 3 years.
Thank you, Superintendent Kittimer, President Close, members of the board, and public. Again, this is initial data for the last 3 years. As was mentioned at last meeting, we are looking to ensure a more robust exit survey when staff choose to leave us, and we know that we cannot require that participation, but we always invite it so that we can learn and improve the system. But this is just a little bit of data over the course of the last 3 years, the total number of those retired who were eligible for that. Can you please, oh, sorry, it's clicking on the mouse. We started to dig into the data to look at what are some of the classifications when staff do resign, and these are some of the major areas that people identified, and we use that as the basis when we started asking people when they did submit that, what that would look like. And so this is some of the resignation data over the course of the last 3 years. And it should be noted that when you see the staffing report, sometimes the resignation is just a portion of a resignation. They might not actually be resigning from the district, but just a portion of their FTE, but that is also captured in that data. And that oftentimes resignations are also rescinded because a staff member might choose to stay with us for a variety of reasons. And so then that would also be captured on subsequent reports. So these are direct quotes from some of the reasons given over the course of the last 3 years for resignations during those informal exit interviews. And you can see that the total numbers reference the numbers over the course of the 3 years, and the bottom bullet on each are those people who gave no specific reason. We're looking to align the reasons given as something that people can choose when they do resign going forward. But you can see that they're grouped mainly within employment areas, moving out of the area, not necessarily for work, but for family and health reasons, et cetera. And so that's just briefly. We've also provided some definition of leaves that we'll come back with at another time, but we wanted to give you a brief glimpse of the data that we're starting to track to identify patterns and trends that inform our recruitment, our hiring, and our retention of staff. And I would also like to make one last note that this data is specific to certificated staff and our certificated teaching staff at this point, not administrative or classified, but of course can bring that forward if requested.
Okay, thank you. So there'll be more. I just wanted to give you this part.
One quick question. I understand we have until the 30th of this month for the resignations to be accepted. So is there a possibility of this data changing after?
It could. I would say probably less than 5%.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, thank you. So I did want to say a couple of things, and as always, President Lyon always says a few things that's going to kind of lead into what I'm going to say. And what I do want to say to all of you, to the board, to my colleagues, that whatever the outcome tonight, I know my work in Santa Rosa City Schools has been and will continue to be some of the most meaningful work I've ever done, that my focus will always and continue to be student-driven. I am proud and honored to be the superintendent of Santa Rosa City Schools, and I'm blessed to work with the people with whom I work, my cabinet, my directors and coordinators, families, teachers, classified staff. We are educators serving students and families. One of the most humanistic professions to exist. As such, I hold myself as a model, and I hope to hold you as well. Modeling a fact-based discourse that is respectful and empathetic towards each other's point of view. Because you see, I don't mind, it's okay to disagree with me. It truly is. But let's do so in a way that's respectful and empathetic. Just as I know you have family, I have 2 children, a husband, and a mother who follows what I do every single day. And so I hope we can remember that I know you all have families, I have a family, and that the work we do here, yes, it's intense, and yes, it's hard, but that we can continue to move forward in a way that is respectful, not always agreeing, but I hope always empathetic. Thank you.
Thank you, Superintendent. My report tonight is I just have a few things to report on. The first is that last Friday I participated in the 3rd and final of my legislative committee meetings with CSBA. I continue to be, or this year, I continue to be really impressed with that group and how hard they work to advocate for students and for schools and for full and fair funding for our schools. I had the I can't actually read my writing on number 2, so I guess I'll come back to that. Number 3 is I had the opportunity on Monday and Tuesday to participate in an effort that was led by the Community Foundation, Sonoma County, and the United Way called Map 1 Sonoma. That is, and Principal Haley also represented, or Director Haley, excuse me, also represented the district there. And it was a diverse group of 85 Sonoma County leaders from various sectors, as well as some folks from outside the area who came together to talk about priorities in the community as we continue to work in recovery in different areas. And it was an interesting process, and there were lots of people there. Director De La Cruz is also there on day 1, working on the equity and inclusion group. Thank you. Working on issues of equity and inclusion, on housing, on health, on labor and workforce, and also in education. And our education group was a group that had members from the nonprofit community, from the pre-K community, from the post-secondary community, from K-12 was represented, and CTE Foundation, as well as some folks from California Forward. And we had a tremendous working group that got a lot done, and we ended up with some pretty significant action items that since Tuesday, and that's yesterday, have already started moving. And we are, and so I just want to make kind of an informal announcement about that, because I'm excited. We have a working goal of this group that for now financially is going to be owned by Cap Sonoma and First 5. And that working goal is for Sonoma County to adapt and change. In a dynamic world, we must ensure equitable access to high quality, relevant local education continuum so that every child will be empowered to achieve their full potential. Therefore, we intend to create a diverse revenue generating portfolio with the goal of increasing funding at least 20%, distributing using an equity and high ROI mechanism, and that is 0 through post-secondary. And so we've already started moving on that, and are excited to bring some other key leaders into that so that we can start bringing in more money to this community for education, because as I keep saying over and over, we cannot wait. We cannot wait for the state to do the right thing. So we have this, Supervisor Hopkins was in our group, and her she suggested working title, which is our title right now, is Our Kids, Our Future. And we are gonna go full steam ahead on this and work on various funding mechanisms with the goal of first getting something on the ballot at the presidential election. So stay tuned for more of that. I still can't read my writing on number 2, and so I am going to assume it's just not that important and move on to board member reports, and we'll start with Director Sheffield.
All right, I will just, I want to thank Will Lyon, actually, for bringing up the parcel tax. This is something that I had mentioned at our last board meeting as a means to sort of get a pulse of the community. How are we feeling about this? But also to create a dialogue, and maybe sooner than later. The intention for me bringing it up, President Lyon, was just to do that, was to reach out to the teachers, to reach out to all of you, so that you are part of this discussion, the dialogue as we move forward. We can talk about the value of a parcel tax, but Will, you're absolutely right, we cannot do it without the support of you guys. And of course, very interested in sitting down with you. I think other members as well as the district office, and of course, bring you into this discussion as we move forward. So I appreciate you bringing that up. I did at the last meeting, I gave out my cell phone number, and I wanted to hear from folks. I didn't get a whole lot of feedback. I did get some, and I actually got a couple of phone calls as well. I did get 2 texts, and that would be preferred if you were interested. I gave my cell phone 707-694-3318, and you can just text me and say, hey, yes, I support this. The 2 responses that I got back were yes, but, and then there were some interests that were brought up, and I do appreciate that feedback as well. So again, I want to continue doing this. I think the time for creating the dialogue right now is very important. There are other measures being proposed in 2020, and if we're going to move forward with this, we need the support of the community. So again, my cell phone, 707-694-3318. I welcome it. You can send me an email. You can reach out to me through social media, however you choose. I would like your feedback. We very much appreciate it. And that's all that I had to report. Thank you.
Thank you. I'm going to mix things up and go non-linearly and go to Director De La Cruz. Keep everyone on their toes tonight. Could you?
So just a really quick shout out. The Imaginists Community Theater is doing an amazing show coming up starting this Friday. And it's a perfect intersection of such cool community work. So it's a bilingual show. We've got paid high school volunteers or high school interns who are going to be acting alongside professionals. It's going to be a free show. They always are free. I'm going to quote Brent Lindsay here, family friendly, totally absurd, and audaciously funny. And you will all also be able to see Jose Soto, who started acting with the Imaginists when he was a senior at LC Allen. So I think this is just a great organization that's really kind of putting at work culturally conscious educational opportunities, really helping folks to develop not only language skills, but an ability to speak and have fun in public. So their opening show is this Friday night, and they will be performing in Juilliard Park the 5th of July, the 12th of July, and the 14th of July. So keep your eyes open for them. And I guess I'd just tag on one thing, President, close to the Map One Sonoma experience, which was a really amazing opportunity of cool folks in one room for a couple of days. And we had a particular experience where the whole room had to take a break for a second, take a pause to really figure out if the work that we were doing had equity centered in the middle of it. And it was uncomfortable, and it was tense, and it was funny, and but we have these moments, and we need to recognize how important they are, of taking a moment. It's literally called an equity pause in whatever it is that we're doing, to make sure that we understand the ways in which we are being thoughtful about the ways we're moving forward together as a community. And so I really took away from that couple of days sitting with a group of people whose time is really precious, and grateful for the moment that we all had together as a community to figure out how best to make sure we were all on the same page and move forward. So in that spirit, adelante.
Thank you. Director McCormick.
No report this evening.
Director Monieri.
I have a pretty short report as well. On Friday, I had the opportunity to speak at Los 100. So for those who don't know, Los 100 is an organization, a group of people that holds space for important conversations that impact our Latino communities across Sonoma County. And that was a really momentous experience for me. And so I just want to publicly thank my colleagues on this board for being so supportive, and a lot of other people, because they know who they are. I was really nervous, and they helped me get through this, so thank you.
You were great. So I don't forget about Omar on the phone. Omar, you want to go next?
Yeah, I just kind of want to say that I'm having a lot of difficulty following along with the meeting. I'm doing my best. It's hard to hear everything. I'm not going to do a report since we're on a mic, and I don't got too much to report anyways. But I'm going to do my best to follow along. The video online sounds a lot better, but it's about a little over a minute delayed. So that's it. Thank you.
Okay. Thanks, Omar. Director Fong.
No report.
Okay. Well, then let's move to the, I don't have a CSBA, NSBA report other than the one I gave during my report. We'll move to the consent item agenda, and let's start with E2. I have one blue card for E2 from Micah Carlin Goldberg.
Thank you, Micah Carlin Goldberg, Steel Lane Elementary. I teach 6th grade. I think this is the 4th or 5th time I've spoken on this agenda item this year because I think it's important. It talks about the health of our district. There were 9 additional complete resignations on tonight's board agenda. That's 9 since 2 weeks ago that have gone through the paperwork, bringing our total to 53 complete resignations this year, and an additional 9 or 10 partial resignations, some of those because they were denied leave and had to resign instead of getting the leave to be with their children. So it talks to our culture in our school district. We are now at, by my count, 53 complete resignations and 36 retirements, which brings us to almost 9% of our entire certificated staff that are leaving us at the end of this year. Churn is one of the most expensive things in corporate business. That's when you have to replace people and train them up and bring them into the fold and teach them how things go on. And our churn is huge. Based on the chart from Ms. Spector, 90 people resigned 2 years ago, 70 people resigned last year, and 53 already this year. I think that was what I remember from the chart. That's more than 10%, about 10%, and just under 10% of our certificated staff. So we have about 970 teachers, which means we're getting 100 new teachers and counselors and other certificated staff every year who have to be trained, who have to go through the very expensive training that you pay the very expensive consultants to come in and do. It talks to the culture of our schools. It needs to change. We want people to stay here. We've got people going to neighboring districts, some of them for money, some of them not for money. I appreciate that there is some data on why people are choosing to leave. People I've talked to who have left were not aware that there was any exit survey, even though they've resigned. Some of them said they had to ask for an exit survey themselves. Some of those predated Ms. Spector, but we've got to do better. Thank you.
Thank you. Are there any questions to staff on E2 or no? Discussion, a motion?
Oh, it's just a consent item, so, right, you're going to, no, I'm good.
Well, if there's no discussion, I'll entertain a motion on E2. Just E2, it's pulled, so we need to vote on it separately, so.
Okay, I move to approve the report of personnel transactions received by staff.
I'll second.
Moved by Director De La Cruz, seconded by Director Sheffield. Roll call vote, please.
Director De La Cruz? Director Sheffield? Director Manieri?
Aye.
Director Fong?
Aye.
Director McCormick?
Aye.
Director Medina? President Close?
Aye. Okay, motion carries. So we'll move to, I'm going to just do all the E items that we have pulled. I pulled E5 just to pull the Strawbridge contract, and so I need a motion on E5 making that amendment.
I'd like to move that we approve item E5 without the Strawbridge contract.
I second.
Okay, moved by Director Medina, second by Director De La Cruz. Roll call vote, please.
Director Medina?
Aye.
Director De La Cruz? Director Manieri? Director Fong?
Aye.
Director McCormick?
Aye.
Director Sheffield?
Aye.
President Close?
Aye. Okay, motion carries. And then I have pulled E6 and E7. I have one blue card. President Afonso wants to speak to each in one comment. Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay.
Weird thing. So as I was reading the new job descriptions, what I noticed that was consistent throughout was the fact that members will be able to have a 22-day payout of their vacation. And we're concerned about that. When CSEA was in negotiations a year or so ago, part of what we negotiated was the fact that it was difficult for the district to figure out what its budget was because we had so many people taking payouts of what they had accumulated. The idea of vacation that was discussed was that's what it is. It's a vacation. It means it's a day away from work. It's not a way to increase your salary. And I was surprised to see that there. And then since that time, I've also learned that those on the management salary schedule have the same option. Moving forward, I would hope that the school board and the district will look at this option that is being offered to these other groups and make us all consistent. If we can't have it and we can't take a payout to increase our salaries a little bit to help us make that extra payment, why are we having it allowed in the other areas? So something to think about moving forward. Thank you.
Thank you.
I just have a question. In our budgeting, do we take into consideration kind of payout available to people? Is there some budget mechanism that allows for us to take into consideration that option?
For management staff, classified, all?
Yeah, we account for that in the budget.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Discussion, I'll entertain a motion on E6 and E7.
I move to approve consent of items E6 and E7.
I'll second.
Moved by Director Fong, second by Director Sheffield. Roll call vote, please.
Director Fong?
Aye.
Director Sheffield?
Aye.
Director De La Cruz?
Aye.
Director Manieri?
Aye.
Director McCormick? Aye. Director Medina?
Aye.
President Close?
Aye. Okay, motion carries, and that brings us to E18, and I have two blue cards, Catherine Howell and then President Fonzo.
Oh, sorry. Oh, you're on. You're on.
Okay. Good evening. I'm Catherine Howell, Lawrence Cook Middle School and lead negotiator SRTA. And I'm speaking tonight specifically to the TIP-TOSA job description found in E18. It's a new position for an SRTA position falling within the SRTA contract that has not been consulted or negotiated on with SRTA. When this position was first mentioned on May 22nd, I contacted HR asking for consultation on the job description as well as negotiations on hours, days, and working conditions, as is our right, and was told absolutely it was still conceptual and that we would be consulted and be, in fact, I quote, shoulder partners in the creation of the job description. Here we are tonight with this job description being presented to the board. SRTA has not been consulted, and the hours, days, and working conditions have not been negotiated. There are certain things within the job description that are concerning. Specifically, hours may vary, which is not within our contract. The employee may be required to work evening meetings, again, not within our contract, and employee may be required to attend out-of-town or out-of-county meetings or conferences, certainly not within our contract. SRTA respectfully requests that you postpone the approval of this job description until we have the opportunity to consult and negotiate with SRCS about this new position of TIP-TOSA. Thank you.
I have one more blue card, so let's, okay. President Alfonso.
Tammy Afonso, CSEA Chapter 75. CSEA was also surprised to see a new job description. This had not been discussed with us nor negotiated. Tonight, you're being asked to approve a job description that has no salary attached to it. It does not contain the words draft. At the May 22nd board meeting, when asked about the salary by Director Medina, Director Turner said she did not know the salary or the cost. Assistant Superintendent Mr. Mazzara stated it would be from around $3 or $13 to $15 depending on knowledge. When the discussion was being held, it was being held on our campus supervisor salary, our job description. There was no mention during the meeting of the creation of a new campus supervisor job description. What was stated that there would be 11 more campus supervisors with training. We ask that the board not approve this job description tonight until we have had a chance to meet and negotiate this with the district. Thank you.
Superintendent. Assistant Superintendent Spector, can you speak to this, please?
In speaking to the first item, the job descriptions that are referenced are actually board approved going back to 2014 in the same language in regards to potential requirements for those duties. And so the shoulder partner conversation would be what might that look like in regards to the specific tobacco grant TOSA position, but the elements of the position itself have been board approved since 2014.
So just to reiterate, the job description that is on the board agenda has not changed since the job description that was approved by the board in 2014.
Correct, not significantly, especially in regards to the requirements noted by Ms. Howell.
And Assistant Superintendent Mazzara, are you going to speak to the campus supervisor?
I will. Thank you. The campus supervisor tip prevention was something we had to include to CDE as part of the grant, just to show that it's a job description existing. It is not a change of any job description. It is exactly the campus supervisor. So if there's an error on our part, so to be clear for the record, it is the current negotiated campus supervisor job description, exactly how Ms. Alfonso has mentioned. There are just those for one for every school. So it is not a change to the job description.
Do you foresee that through the grant that there would need to be some work together with the unions about some different job duties that this grant would require?
Not in terms of the campus supervisor. I think the standard operation and what we're going for would be exactly how we're currently using campus supervisors. Of course, there's always a concern about hiring and workforce. That may be a separate conversation, but in terms of the job description duties, it should be exactly that campus supervisors are doing at all the high schools, as an example.
And the TOSA?
The TOSA is modeled after, as Assistant Superintendent Spector said, exactly how we have modeled TOSA since 2014. Welcome a conversation about if there's anything different, but we think we can certainly work within existing frameworks.
So not anything different or out of the contract based on the current approved job description?
Exactly.
I have another blue card. Let's take that. President Lyon.
Point of information, the job description was not negotiated in 2014.
Do you have something? Oh, do you have the copy? Well, they are. Here's my suggestion. I don't want to enter into something that there's doubt, and of course this has created some doubt. Don't want to operate that way. So my suggestion, President Close, let's postpone this item so that there can be the adequate discussion around them. Is it grant dependent? Is that something that, is there anything grant depending on these positions right now, these job descriptions being approved?
No, the timeline is just we have to expend within 2 years.
So my recommendation, President Close, let's postpone these two job descriptions until we can have the discussions we need to have with both unions.
Okay, so the matter, kind of to be expedient, I'm going to make the motion that we continue these motions till such time that it can be, that both unions can be consulted on the job descriptions on this and bring it back. Yes. And I'll look for a second on that.
I move that we table E18.
Do you second my motion?
Oh, I'm sorry. I missed that you were, I thought you were,
I think I was mumbling,
I thought you
I'm
were
sorry.
asking for the motion. So I second it.
Oh, thanks. All right, moved by Director Close and second by Director McCormick. Any discussion? Director Fong.
It's a little disconcerting that this is coming up now in public, and I don't know why that is. I would just encourage staff, Diane staff, to figure out what's going on, that things shouldn't be a surprise to anyone in terms of job descriptions. And it's probably seeming like a new job description because it's a new grant and it's a huge grant, and it's a big deal. I understand that you're using older job descriptions because they are doing the same thing. The campus supervisors are looking for all these things, because I read through these things. But I think the surprise is disconcerting for us all.
Any other comments? Yeah, I'll make a comment. I also just want to make an invitation that if, you know, this invitation is always to the board members, and the board knows, and to the public and to staff members, that if you think that there's a reason why something should, you get the agenda on Friday night and you think there's a reason that something should actually be pulled and postponed, and that's your specific comment and ask, and you think that that's a reasonable one that we're going to consider, we're pretty reasonable people. And so I encourage you to shoot the superintendent and me an email and make that request, because sometimes it can be done easily. And I think this is one where it seems like there perhaps is some miscommunication, and we better work that out. All right, so I'll call any other, if there are no other comments, and I'll call for roll call vote, please, Lori.
Okay. President Close?
Aye.
Director McCormick? Aye. Director De La Cruz?
Aye.
Director Montieri?
Aye.
Director Fong?
Aye.
Director Sheffield? Director Medina?
Motion carries. Thank you. Okay, so what I need now is a motion on the remaining consent agenda items, which are items 1 through 4 and 8 through 17.
I move that we have consent items 1 through 4 and 8 through 17.
Second.
Moved by Director Fong, second by Director Sheffield. Roll call vote, please.
Director Fong? Director Sheffield?
Aye.
Director De La Cruz?
Aye.
Director Montieri?
Aye.
Director McCormick?
Aye.
Director Medina? President Close?
Aye. Okay, motion carries, and that brings us to our discussion action item agenda, F agenda, starting with F1, action adoption of local accountability plan, local control accountability plan, LCAP Elementary District.
Good evening, President Close, Superintendent, Dr. Kitamura, members of the board. Tonight we'll be presenting in front of you and for hopefully final approval, both of our LCAPs for elementary and secondary. Our presentation tonight covers both LCAPs, although there are 2 agenda items due to our 2 different districts. Just a little background. This is slightly different than the one that was uploaded. We'll make sure that we change them out. As you can see, we've had some opportunities to gather input through the LCAP. We do have monthly district advisory committee meetings. We've also been presenting at DLAC. We had the electronic survey, Thought Exchange, and Youth Truth that was open in March. We had our SUN Stakeholders Unity Network on May 29th. We consulted with both SRTA and CSEA on June 6th, and at our last June meeting, we had our public hearing.
So in this time, one of the feedback loops we did differently was the Youth Truth Survey. And that was a survey that we started at 4 high schools. And we went with that because it was a grant at first to kind of see what it looks like. And there are a lot of things that we were really impressed with it. So as we go through some of these slides, you'll see some of the data that we took back from the surveys.
So, okay.
Okay, there we go.
We're having a little bit of a problem with our...
Snap.
Yeah.
The system, the speaker system, all of these things are not working well tonight. So sorry about that. Yeah, don't look at it. It's probably dangerous.
Okay, let's just speak to, I guess.
Okay.
We'll just try to move we'll speak to it.
So we're on slide number 4. And one of the things we liked about the survey is it talks about students, families, and staff, and it has questions that are pretty appropriate for each of those, and they can dig into a little bit more information, which we hope that will be useful for us as we develop not just the LCAP, but some feedback for individual school sites. On slide number 5, it kind of gives you some information that takes our schools, and remember, these are 4 of the high schools, and looks at a survey across the state of California and California schools. And it gives information about students that are reporting their experience with academic rigor, engagement, belonging in peer collaboration, relationships, college and career readiness, and culture. And the slides, should you see them, would show you that we don't quite match up exactly in all our areas, but one thing to note is that, again, this was not all our schools. This was just our high school sample pilot that we did, and we're confident that if we include things like our middle schools and even elementary, if we go forward, we'll get closer to the state averages. So we think some of the gaps are explained that way. We're on number 6 at this point. Talked about LCAP goal number 1, which of course is providing coherent, rigorous, relevant teaching and learning. Students rated that as somewhat of a strength at 54%. 3 in 4 students said that in order to get a good grade, I have to work hard in my class, and that's an example of good student feedback. 7 in 10 students said they can tell that my teachers understand the subjects they are teaching. An area of opportunity in the area under LCAP 1 is 27% of the students reported positive college and career readiness. We're on to slide number 7. Building on the idea of academic rigor, the students felt that they, in order to work hard, in order to receive a good grade, they do have to work hard in their classes. 75% felt they needed to. 68% felt that I can tell my teacher understands the subjects they are teaching. 50% felt that the work that I do in my classes really makes me think, as opposed to, let's say, this state standard or the standard in this, which was 62%. And that another strong figure is my teachers give me assignments that help me better understand the subject. That was 51% of the students provided that feedback. And there's numbers in the areas of college and career readiness. Some of the highlights there are 28% of the students think that they can figure out which careers match my interest and abilities, that schools helped me. 34% feel that school helped me understand the steps I need to take in order to have the career that I want. 46% felt that they could develop skills and knowledge that they need for college level courses. Slide number 9 talks about questions in the LCAP 2 side of it, increased student family wellness and engagement. 43% of the students reported positive engagement. 7 in 10 students said that they do try their best in schools. An area of opportunity in this was noted in the survey that 25% of the students reported positive culture, and that's certainly something that we need to improve. There are various figures that were around those and student feedback on that engagement. As an example, 72% that they try their best in schools. That's a little lower than about 79%, which was the California state average. They take pride in their school, 51% said they take pride in their school. 46% said they describe teacher expectations and want to make me do my best. Some areas to work in is that they learn, their focus was that what I learn in school helps me outside of school, and only 28% believe that. Relationships is another key part of this on slide 11. That was one of the reasons we felt that was approach, and 78% of students felt that many of their teachers believe that I can get a good grade if I try. 60% felt that they thought their teachers were fair, a little bit lower than about 64% with the state. 58%, many of my teachers are willing to give extra help on schoolwork if needed. And there's some other comments. One of the most concerning ones for feedback is 23% that felt that many of my teachers connect what students are learning in the classroom to life outside of the classroom. And the state average on that was about 38%, we were 23%. Culture was another strong point. Again, one of the other areas we felt Youth Truth was strong. Most adults in this school treat students with respect. 57% of the students felt that. More of the state average in California was about 63%. Most students in this school want to do well in class. That was 35%, more of a state average around 48%. Discipline in this school is fair. That was 32%, state average more around 45%. Most students in this school treat adults with respect, 29% as opposed to about 43%. Families are another, go ahead.
Mr. Majera, these are so important, and I think the slides are really good and showing the differences and stuff, and I think that our clerk, Lori, has said that if we take a short recess, she can reboot the system and it might work better.
Oh, great.
So since we have lots of people here to see this, and I think it would be a good idea to do that. So what, 5 minutes, 10 minutes? 5 minutes. We will take a 5-minute break. Okay, we'll bring the meeting back to order. We're going to start where we left off, or a little bit before, and there will be we will do a longer report about this data, right?
Yeah, so two things before Assistant Superintendent Mazzara continues. I want to say two things. First, I'd like to thank the CTE Foundation for providing this opportunity for our high schools, especially with Youth Truth. We were not the only, this was a grant in which we didn't have to pay, our high schools didn't have to pay to participate in the survey, so the 5 high schools plus Ridgeway. However, there were other districts that also participated. So this last Friday, our principals who did do the survey, there were 3 of them out of the 5, and also those other schools got together in the Bay Area and actually were able to disaggregate the data, because there's a lot of data here. And so as we move through the slides, you'll see that some of our next steps for next year are actually moving the surveys earlier in the year, so we have more time, but we will be bringing back this information throughout the year as we too are disaggregating this huge amount of data, and you can actually look at high schools and comparisons.
Thank you.
So on slide 10, we were talking about engagement, and student engagement was obviously one of the key questions, and you see there in the graphing that we already went over, that there's a strong percentage that they do try their best. One of the areas of growth are around what I learn in class helps me outside of school. Next one. So relationships, we discussed that. So 78% thought that their teachers, that they can get a good grade if they try hard. 60% are fair. If you go down to the areas of growth on that slide, many of my teachers make an effort to understand what my life is like outside of school, 24% on that. Many of my teachers connect students are learning in classroom life outside of the classroom, 23%. Please remember, this is high schools, not all the high schools. We do think that if we add middle schools and elementaries to this next year, we'd get much tighter to the average. I mentioned these before, the culture area of opportunities, that there's some respect. Most students of this school treat adults with respect. That's certainly an area that we need to improve on. Discipline in the school is fair. Those are certainly areas of growth. Family side of it, 72% of families responded with positive relationships, strong cultures, and engagement. Communication feedback and additional resources for families would be some of their input in areas that they would like to see change. Staff, we had a couple questions on their relationships, their engagement, culture, and PD and support. And you'll see the PD and support is one of the lower ends as opposed to relationship, which is almost like the average. And that number will come back and we'll explain what we do with that.
So we had a contract with Thought Exchange for the last three years. This is the last year. And so you can see that for our K-8 schools, we used we used Thought Exchange. And so we had 488 participants, 732 thoughts, and 20,000 ratings. And you can see who participated with the percentages. So 95% of responses were in English, 5% in Spanish. And so that shows us that we're actually not reaching all of our targeted families and also areas. 55% parent guardian, 42% staff, and 58% of the responses were with elementary schools. As I said, this was primarily K-8, and you can see the schools that had the most responses. So as we move forward, Assistant Superintendent Mazzara and I have been talking about how are other ways that we can reach out to our families. It might not just be at schools. It might be actually going to other places that we can actually engage, and maybe not always being, online. So out of those, you can see the top rated responses about competitive wages for staff, around lunch, around facilities, like in the garden, and reducing class sizes. And so when we look at the totality of all of our feedback, these are some of the additions and continued supports in our LCAP. We are, through the tentative agreement, we are continuing to lower class sizes in math, science, and English. Obviously with goal 2, supporting the social and emotional and the student connectedness, extending our college and career hours, some boost programs in math, and also some continuous PD options. We will continue reductions in the LCAP with reductions to consulting contracts, Looking at how we can continue services that we've paid through the LCAP through title funding, also not refilling some resignations and retirements, and also looking at any unfilled vacancies and closing them. So one of the things that we talked about a little bit in May, and also when we talked about with both unions, is that as you are going through your strategic plan, which I have had an opportunity to see your priorities, it's super exciting where this board is going. We obviously would like to align, like we did the first time, our LCAP to that strategic plan. Like I stated before, improving that outreach to families and what that might look like, and also improving participation at targeted schools. We do need to have an earlier survey cycle so we have time not only to be able to disaggregate the data, but also to bring those results several times to the board. And I think next year will look different around the LCAP. We're gonna have a new template, but beyond that, with the new strategic plan, we're gonna have to figure out what that alignment's gonna look like, and so we're gonna be bringing that here more. Around the survey though, and I did wanna say this, I had to look at my phone really quickly, it will be interesting, I think, as we move forward with Youth Truth, when we're talking about comparisons. Approximately 80,000 students representing 60 school districts in California were taking Youth Truth this last year. So I think that's really helpful as we move forward. And with that, we turn it over to the board.
Thank you. So we'll start with questions for staff, actual specific questions. Anybody with specific questions? Director Fong.
Thank you. I know that this is the data that's informing the LCAP, the rewriting of the LCAP. Is this data being shared with schools, teachers, principals?
So each of the schools that participated, they actually received all of this data, and so they will be sharing this as they learn how to disaggregate, because it's a huge amount of data, and that's one of the reasons why they were able to attend last Friday, sort of this big meeting to understand how to be sharing this. I'm sure it'll help form some of their SIPSs moving forward and also some of their work as a site.
So we're missing 2 of the 5 comprehensive high schools. Timing, perhaps?
Timing, perhaps. However, it's, how do I say this? It is our hope and also our expectation that they will, all 5 high schools plus all of our schools, to participate in this, because this is very rich data for schools.
Director De La Cruz.
So I know you mentioned that this was all kind of outreach done that was online, and the data reflects that we're not hearing from our Spanish-speaking community in particular. Can you talk a little bit about what you imagine doing to change the outreach kind of forms and ideas as we continue to develop and push this out?
Well, first of all, I think we can make some suggestions, but I also think we have to engage our parents, right, with that question. I think going to DLAC and having that conversation with them and getting their input back about what they believe is the best way to be able to engage them in outreach. Obviously, we need to have paper forms, but beyond that, what does that look like? And maybe it's not necessarily a meeting at a school. Maybe it's other opportunities within the community in which we can engage with them.
I would also like to say that after trying Thought Exchange for 3 years, it's just not the mean by which we want to gather data for our EL population. It's just not conducive.
Any other questions? Director McCormick.
You said that our middle schools were not included in this?
They were not included in the Youth Truth. They were included in the Thought Exchange.
Okay. And so in those state average numbers, is that like a 6 through state, on the state ones, is that 6 through 12?
It's K through 12.
K through 12. Okay, thank you.
Okay, I don't have any blue cards on this, so I discussion or entertain a motion. Director McCormick.
Sorry, I thought we would comment. I'm excited that we're looking at student voice, but I am alarmed at these percentages, both for us and the state. I know this is new, and we don't really have, this is like a leaping off point, a benchmark. But as a teacher and a board member, I don't know, these numbers are upsetting in a lot of cases. So I think it'll be interesting and I'm really interested to see how both the state and we improve in this area, because there just seems to be a really big gap. But I do think that since it was like our first, chance at this survey, and I think some buy-in across the board would be really helpful for us, or buy-in across the district. It would be very helpful for us to see, really accurate, and maybe the numbers are the same, I don't know, but I want to make sure we're getting a larger attendance and participation in it. Yeah.
I think that as any piece of data that I want us to be aware of as we're looking at it, it's really for us to ask more questions. It's not anything to be alarmed. I don't want people to get freaked out. Oh my God, this is our first time. This is our baseline of information. Now we ask questions, and that's simply thinking about it from a growth mindset. So I want us to be sure and stay in that frame and not go to that compliance. Oh my gosh, we have to meet these certain things. So,
Director Fong.
Thank you for working to get community voice and youth voice. This is exactly what we should be doing with the LCAP, and I think survey instruments are all fraught with issues and problems, and if you ask on one day, it's one answer, you ask another day, it's another answer, you ask one way, it's one answer, another way, it's another answer. I mean, I've done plenty of surveys as a teacher and a principal where, it looks great, I'm feeling great, and then the next day it's like, oh my gosh, I'm crying, I don't think I should be doing this job anymore. So I think it really behooves us to not overreact on some of these numbers because they were a little upsetting, but in context. And I think it really behooves every single one of us in the educational system, and I know people are already thinking this when they hear about this and see it, is that how can we ask our own students every single day, the ones in front of us, how we are doing? How are we doing? And really it's about teaching and learning, not just teaching, right? Not just learning, it's about learning and who's in front of us, because I've heard so many people just say that my students love me, we're really great, and they are really great. Yet we're getting kind of bigger numbers like this, and so that teacher can't be the only exception, because I've heard many, many, many students talk about how much they love their teachers and how much a difference a teacher has made. Yet we really have to look at every single student, not just the ones that are in front of our faces, our fans, but the ones that we're not reaching, the ones that we may not like, right? We love them all, we may not like them all that particular minute, that particular day or semester. So I think it really is up to all of us to keep digging really, really hard in terms of how we serve our students, because students and the economics and the community and the state of our country has changed, and our systems, and I say this over and over again, our systems need to change with it, because sometimes the systems keep us in those silos and we can't do different work. We cannot do different work when we have these many periods or these few minutes or these many disciplines or these many things that we have to cover or whatever it is like that. So I want to keep pushing this and how we change the system so that we can all do our best work for our students. End of speech.
Okay. Well, I'm really excited about us doing Youth Truth. It was disappointing that all of our high schools couldn't participate, and I look forward to them doing that next time, and I really look forward to doing a deeper dive into this. I know we're going to do that, doing some disaggregation, and so that we can really learn from this. Some of this it's hard not to be a little bit dismayed by some of these numbers, both on the state level and the local level, and I'm going to take it as, Mayor Tom Schweithelm always likes to say that feedback is a gift. So I'm going to thank you for this gift, and I know that we will use this to our advantage, and it says a lot, I think, that we're asking our students and families and staff for this information, and so I applaud that effort, and another thank you to CTE Foundation for making sure that our district was part of this effort. So this is an action item, and also thank you for your work on the LCAP. I think that there's some excellent work in here to support our students and support our educators in supporting our students. So I'll entertain a motion.
I'd like to make a motion that we adopt the Local Control Accountability Plan, Elementary District.
I'll second.
Moved by Director Fong, second by Director Sheffield. Roll call vote, please.
Director Fong? Director Sheffield?
Aye.
Director De La Cruz?
Aye.
Director Montieri?
Aye.
Director McCormick?
Aye.
Director Medina?
Is that an aye?
Aye.
President Close?
Aye. Oh, that was me. Sorry. I said aye. Director Medina?
Director Medina?
He said aye. Can you say that one more time, Director Medina? I muted you for a second. I took you off speaker. Thank you. Okay, motion carries. Thank you. Okay, F2, action item, adoption of local control accountability plan, secondary district.
So with that, I sort of turn it back over to the board. It's very similar. Obviously, the presentation was for both.
Yeah, thank you. So are there any specific questions about the secondary LCAP for staff? Discussion? Not, I'll entertain a motion.
I move adoption of the local control accountability plan, secondary district.
Second.
Moved by Director Fong, second by Director Sheffield, and I'll just thank you again for your work on this. I know it's a huge, huge effort that you do every year, and I think you continually try to improve it, so thank you. Roll call vote, please, Lori.
Director Fong?
Aye.
Director Sheffield?
Aye.
Director De La Cruz?
Aye.
Director Montieri?
Aye.
Director McCormick?
Aye.
Director Medina?
Aye.
President Close?
Aye. All right, motion carries. Thank you. F3, an action item, adoption of Santa Rosa City Schools budget for the 2019-20 school year.
Good evening, President Close, Superintendent Kitamura, members of the board. Tonight we are submitting the 2019-20 Santa Rosa City Schools budget for approval. Since the presentation and public hearing on June 12th, there have been no material or substantial changes or revisions. As final details and impacts of the California budget emerge, we'll bring back a revised budget at the first meeting in August within the 45-day revision window. I turn back to the board for any questions.
Any specific questions from the board? Discussion? Director Fong?
I move adoption of the Santa Rosa City Schools budget for the 2019-20
I
school year.
second.
Moved by Director Fong, second by Director De La Cruz. And before I call for roll call vote, I will thank you, Assistant Superintendent Edson, for your hard work. I know that everyone feels more comfortable with the numbers that we get now than we ever have, and so I thank you for your work on that. Roll call vote, please.
Director Fong?
Aye.
Director De La Cruz?
Aye.
Director Montieri? Director McCormick?
Aye.
Director Sheffield?
Aye.
Director Medina?
Aye.
President Close?
And also, I forgot to thank Joel along with that. Joel Dantas, thank you. Thank you very much. Aye, motion carries. I forgot about your mini-me. He's not with you. Okay, so we're moving on to F4, and we have, I'm gonna take about a 2-minute break because we need to figure out a PowerPoint thing before we start, okay? So another break, just a quickie though. Thanks. Okay, we'll bring the meeting back to order after the longest 2 minutes in history. Okay, so we are moving on to F4. There's a new requirement that we make an oral recommendation regarding superintendent salary and fringe benefits. And so I'll have to actually read something on that, and I will do that in a second, but first I'm going to kind of explain how we're doing this because it's not totally normal. And that, you know, the superintendent is the board's only direct report. She's our only employee, and the 7 of us do our best in managing our one employee. And so since this is the one contract that we really negotiate kind of face-to-face at arm's length, that we, the executive board, Director Fong and Director Manieri and I will give essentially the staff report, kind of the fact staff report, and then we will just, as if it's any other action item, we'll call for board questions specific to our report if there are any. Then we'll go through blue cards. I've got a stack of them here. Everybody will get their 3 minutes, and then the board will engage in discussion and voting as always. So that's how it's going to go, and I'm going to start first with the statutorily required reading that I do about this contract that's come before us. So I will start by saying California law requires that during open session I provide the board with a report as to the value of the superintendent in Diane Kitamura's contract, the term of which is July 1 through 2019 through June 30th, 2021. Contract states that the superintendent's salary will be $218,000 during the 1920 school year and $235,000 for the 2021 school year. Contract also provides for a stipend of $1,200 for a master's degree and $1,200 for a doctoral degree. The contract provides superintendent with the same access to health, dental, and vision benefits as any other management employees. The contract states that if the superintendent remains in her position through the end of the 1920 school year, the district will cover her additional health insurance premium until the age of 65, unless she leaves the district and obtains another position that provides comparable retirement benefits. Cost of supplemental health insurance plan will be provided at age 65 until age 85. Finally, the contract provides for $500 monthly reimbursement of costs of maintaining a vehicle, dues for professional organization membership, and provision of a cell phone and laptop computer. Okay, so moving to our report. Just a brief introduction. This has been a difficult and lengthy process, and I'm glad to see so many people here. We care about your voice. These are difficult decisions, and we take them very seriously, and we have to balance a lot of information and needs and obligations in our decision-making process. And so I appreciate your involvement in the process. So we're going to share this presentation, and we'll start with Director Fong. Actually, Director Fong, you don't have a slide. Director Fong is going to talk about superintendent salary negotiations in general.
No visual, sorry.
All right.
So superintendent salaries are negotiated. They're always negotiated. There isn't a district that has the superintendent management on a salary schedule tied to staff salary. It doesn't happen. It doesn't happen that way. And one reason is the scarcity of effective superintendents. Superintendents can shop their districts and they can choose. The average superintendent tenure is 3 years. And actually it takes them probably more than that to really become effective superintendents. So really by the time they are here for 3 years, they're just about hitting their stride, and then they kind of move on. So that's the average. And while certificated staff enjoy the process of tenure and job protection, I certainly did as a teacher, superintendents and assistant superintendents do not. They really serve at the whim of either the superintendent or the board, if it's the superintendent. There's no such thing as tenure. And so when a district selects a new superintendent, it's usually after search by a very qualified committee, and the salary is then negotiated. The system is not, here's the salary, take it or leave it. It doesn't work that way. It has never worked that way. It doesn't work that way anywhere. It has everything to do with hiring the most qualified, effective candidate for a district, and having the most attractive school system with lots of possibility, qualified staff, great families, having a solid board of education and policies, and a strong community where an educational leader will want to live, put his or her hat, and call that district his or her own. It's really a negotiation process. So you're gonna hear in a little bit, the next little bit, you're gonna hear a little bit of history of how we all got to this point, and then we'll move on from there.
Thank you. So why did this take so long, for one thing? That is a good question. There are a couple of facts. And first, I want to back up. There's something that I forgot that I wanted to make public, and that is that, our closed session discussions are confidential. They're confidential by law, but we can vote to daylight specific things. And we did in closed session vote to daylight a couple of things. And one of the things we voted to daylight, and the superintendent agreed, as she had to because it's a personnel matter, is the fact that the first contract that you saw that gave the superintendent a $50-something thousand raise was not proposed by the superintendent. That actually came from the board. When we looked at the superintendent's contract, one of the things that we did was we created a list of what we thought were realistic comparable districts to ours. We looked in the Bay Area and we pulled about 7 or 8 districts, it was either 7 or 8, that had student body sizes plus or minus 2,000 and had somewhat similar economics in their geographical area. And we made it an average. And we made a decision at that time to bring our superintendent up to the average of comparable districts. And so we proposed that number, and it was significantly more than the one that Superintendent Kitamura had proposed to us. So I think that that's important that everybody know. The other thing that the board voted to daylight was a little bit about the process of when Dr. Kitamura was initially hired, when she was, just Diane Kitamura, Ms. Kitamura, not Dr. And at the time I was the only person on the board, so we had to go back and do a little research on that. But one of the things that I think everybody should know is that we had 4 finalists, and there were really only 3 serious finalists, but we had 4 finalists from a pool, and the pool was small. And the pool was small at the time, and our recruiter, Rich Thome, told us it was small because of the amount of that our current superintendent was making, because it was significantly below average for the size of our district in a geographical area with a cost of living that, as you know, is very high. So our 4 finalists came in, or 3 of our 4 finalists, everyone but Diane, came in with salaries that were $229, $256, and $274, an average of $253. So there's a reality that happened at that time that if we had hired anyone but Diane Kitamura, someone would be using as a starting point in their negotiation a salary that hovered somewhere around $250, and that was 4 years ago. So that's an important thing to know, and I think then I'm going to speak a little bit more about that process at the time, but that gives you a little bit of history about when Diane was hired. When she applied for the job, she made a salary, her offer for salary, her ask for salary was $226,000, which was less than the average here and less than the next lowest paid candidate coming in. And that is actually the ask that she made to us at the beginning of our negotiation this year, was actually the same ask that she made 4 years ago. Now, competitive salaries are important in every, in every profession. And one of the things that is unique with superintendent salaries is that it's kind of a small world. And this is what I've learned from Rich Thome, and I'm passing on what he said to me, and he's kind of considered to be one of the top superintendent recruiters in the state, and he has been our recruiter. And that is that it's a small world in superintendents, and even though it's supposed to be a private process, it's not always. And if you get to be a finalist, at that point it becomes not private, and that really sometimes jeopardizes your relationship at your own district. And so superintendents are not willing to even apply for jobs unless they have some idea that they might be able to negotiate a salary that they want or need or feel they deserve. And so if in the future we want to have a large pool of applicants, and in the kind of upper level administrative ranks, those pools are very small. We've seen that over the last few years with our looking for CBOs. Those pools are very small. For special assistant superintendents in charge of special education, for HR people, the pools are very small, and they're particularly small if your pay is less than average for comparable districts. And the other thing that is unique, and again, talking to Rich Thome about our area, is that we are this kind of geographical island. If you are in, if you get a job in Fremont or in Richmond or Pleasanton or something, you could buy a house there, and then you have, a whole circle of hundreds of districts around you, several counties, in fact, that are within some kind of reasonable commuting district, and you could settle down there and say, I'm gonna live in this area of the Bay Area and have lots of room to move and grow throughout your career. But in Sonoma County, that's just not the case. There are not that many jobs, and so sometimes if you wanna move up or move to a next district, what you gotta do is get a job in San Diego, for example. So that it's a good example. So that creates another challenge to bringing in a large competitive pool for our superintendents. So after we made this determination that we were gonna bring it up to our comparable average that we had discussed, we heard from all of you. And we heard from the newspaper, and we heard from the community, we heard from lots of people, and we do listen. And sometimes just because we disagree with you doesn't mean that we don't listen and consider, and I think that's important to say again and again. We do listen, and we think, we consider seriously your input. And so we decided that whatever decision we were gonna make, that we were gonna go back to the drawing board and make sure that it was evidence-based, and that it was really, we thought we did a pretty decent job coming up with a comparable average, but that we were gonna really make sure that we came up with a solid number to use to make this decision. And with that, I'll turn it over to Director Manieri.
Thank you. So I'm going to talk a little bit about the comparables and how we got to our comparables. So there's been a lot of talk about the state average for superintendents being around 200,000. And as President Close already mentioned, we took into account the many different variables that drive superintendent salary, like geographical professional opportunities, the cost of living, and the district size. So, for example, the state average, size of a district in California is 6,500 students, but Santa Rosa City Schools is twice that, and our cost of living is incredibly much higher. So we wanted to determine what the more relevant working average salary was for our discussions. And so this led to what you see on the screen. We looked at we determined 24 comparable counties in the Greater Bay Area. We are looking at ADA between 8,000 and 2,400,000 students because SRCS has 16,000. And what we found is that for these 24 comparable counties, the average salary is $252,115. And so right now, with this average that we were able to determine, we found that the current salary for the superintendent in our district is second to last. And after, with the recommendation of the board, the new superintendent salary would be ninth to last. So so this is a visual representation of this. The red arrow is the average for the comparable counties in the Greater Bay Area. We currently, where we are, is down at the bottom at the yellow bar. Then with the first increase, we would be at the purple, which it looks like is fourth from the bottom. And then with the fourth. And then with the green bar, we're still ninth and way below the comparable average. one more thing that I'd like to mention, the only county or only district that we are above at the moment is Vacaville Unified in Solano County. And with that, I pass it back to President Close.
Yeah, so one of the things that we discussed in our, and has come up in the public in our first closed session around that first contract offering is that, you know, even though this is a female-dominated profession, let's actually go forward one. Even though it's a female-dominated profession, there is still a huge gender gap in the pay. There's a big one, and I'm going to talk a little bit more about that in my personal comments, but there's a big gender gap. There also is a gap with respect to superintendents of color and white superintendents, and this board has made very clear that it has a strong commitment to equity. You know, one of the things, the differences between where you have sort of a contractual or statutory protected job is that that can help to even out those gender and ethnicity gaps. When it's purely negotiated, that's when you really see those gaps come up, and this has been a big one. And so we also wanted to make sure that we were not exacerbating or playing into these kind of pay gaps. So with that, that's the conclusion of our kind of data-driven report, and we'll start with any specific questions about the report from the board. Seeing none, I'm going to move to our blue cards. And we will start with, I have Ever Flores, and then Daniel Pablo, and then Micah Carlin Goldberg.
Can you hear me?
We do have a lot of blue cards, so if people could kind of queue up at both podiums, then it will help us move faster. Daniel Pablo next, and then Micah Carlin Goldberg.
Hi, can you hear me? Okay, so I have worked as a negotiator and a chapter president for the Healdsburg Area Teachers Association for more than 10 years. As you may have experienced, associations and districts don't always see eye to eye. Now, having said that, it has been a not written rule, at least in Healdsburg and the surrounding areas in Sonoma County, that once a superintendent is hired, that when unions negotiate salary, all district employees, including superintendent, get the same raise. Why do we have this unwritten rule? Why? Because we're in it together, and every single employee matters, no matter what your title is. Please consider the message you're sending to the rest of the Santa Rosa City school employees, especially those who are making less than $15 an hour. Thank you.
Daniel Pablo, Micah Carlin Goldberg, then Cynthia Ingram. Daniel.
Check. Okay. Sorry. So my name is Daniel Pablo, and I was a former student body president of my high school, and now I'm the newly elected student trustee of the Board of Trustees at the junior college. And I would just like to thank the community and the board for being here today. But before I continue, I would just like to say that, Diane, that you are a great human being, and that you have a lot of compassion, and you really work hard for the community. But saying that, I just want to say the pay raise of the superintendent is a slap in the face to the teachers that we have who are struggling to meet ends meet. I would just like to ask the board to not approve the raise. And we should look at the institutions that we have at our community. Even our junior college that we have our president, who doesn't even represent 30,000 people, makes $400,000. And that's something that we don't even look at. And I feel that as a student voice on the Board of Trustees, I would just like to say that if the board cannot vote no on this. Thank you.
Thank you. Micah Carlin Goldberg, Cynthia Ingram, and then Jim Carroll.
So before I start, I'd like to say it's really difficult to hear who's up next if you're speaking while everybody's still clapping. I've had that problem in the past where I couldn't hear my name, so I just want to put that out there. So my name is Micah Carlin Goldberg, 6th grade teacher at Steele Lane. I noticed that one of the comparable districts on your new list, which has 17 different districts than last time, and your explanation was good about why that changed, was New Haven, which is the school district that just ended a 14-day teacher strike. And one of the reasons the teachers chose to strike, as stated by their website, was the discrepancy in administrator pay to teacher pay. And I quote, New Haven had the second highest overall administrator pay in the county behind Oakland Unified. We're giving the biggest pay raise to the one person in our district who makes a living wage. The yard supervisors in my school next year with their 7.5% raise will make $13.01. They work 4.5 hours a day, 181 working days, which is about $50 over $10,000 a year. That is not a living wage. Even at $15 an hour, that's not a living wage. It's a slap in the face for every CSEA employee. It's a slap in the face for every SRTA employee. The initial offer to Santa Rosa Teachers Association for the current negotiating cycle was 1% for next year. The COLA from the state for next year is estimated to be at 3.29%, which means anything less than that is a takeaway. The state is planning to increase our overall funds by over 3%. Next year, the teachers are getting 3%, which means we're basically getting a COLA, not a raise. The following year, we're gonna get about a 1.5% raise, assuming the estimated COLA stays the same. Cost of living adjustments are not raises. They keep you where you are. And we haven't been getting COLAs for the last, I finished my 4th year in the district. I'm gonna be above 40% in the seniority scale, which means 40% of the educators in our district were hired after me. And in my time, the first raise that we have received that has been at a COLA is the one for next year, which means the first 4 years that I've been in this district, we have made less than a COLA increase. Cost of living adjustment. It gets more expensive to live here. We're not making it. We're not. We have teachers fleeing for districts that pay more, that have better health care so they can support their families. A 10% turnover in teachers every year is atrociously high. Please make a better decision. Raise the boats together. Thank you.
Cynthia Ingram, Jim Carroll, and then John Cortopassi.
Good evening. My name is Cynthia Ingram. I'm from Santa Rosa High School. And I want to advocate that all employees district-wide receive the same raise, recently improved by the Santa Rosa City Schools. I am absolutely trying to be respectful, but honestly, it was a punch to my gut to read about the proposed salary for the superintendent, even as it dropped from 29 to 18%. When the cost of living, as it is for all of us in Sonoma County, is so high, to consider giving any subgroup in our district such a disproportionate salary increase and placing their salary above the state average while other salaries in the district are below the state average is, in my opinion, insulting and demonstrates a blatant disparity in how the board values the employees in the district. Together, let's agree to be consistent, equitable, and fair. We all struggle with the cost of living in Sonoma County. A united rather than a divided district will best serve those for whom we are all here, our students. Thank you.
Thank you, Jim Carroll, then John Cortopassi, then Tawny Johnson for Margaret Bunn.
Hi, I'm Jim Carroll, Santa Rosa High School, but equally important, perhaps more important, I'm a parent of 2 children in Santa Rosa City Schools. I'm feeling incredulous tonight. In fact, not just tonight, but all the time. I keep expecting every day for the district, the school board to come to their senses. You are taxpayers, just like all of us. You are adults. You have freely chosen to be in the positions of leadership. This raise, even at roughly half of what was insanely originally proposed, this raise, if more than anything, is discouraging, which concerns me. I'm discouraged with the decisions this district is making. Why is this raise double what you reluctantly gave your teachers? You are public employees. You are duly elected officials. You are entrusted with making decisions that benefit our community. I don't understand why our superintendent needs more of a raise than the teachers of this district. The teachers and their students are the core, right? Forget the district's ridiculous and insulting fight for 1%. Forget the countless numbers of employees that stood up and helped bring Santa Rosa some healing after those devastating fires. Forget even the insulting and totally inappropriate accusation that the community and the employees of this fine school district that opposed this raise were sexist and racist. That was insulting. How do we get to this place of what feels like constant acrimony between the district office and certificated and classified staff? What has changed? Are we not all on the same team? The mission is to educate our youth, right? Educate our young, support your staff, protect your facilities, pay the bills. That's what you opted for when you moved to administration. For frame of reference, Governor Gavin Newsom will earn $202,000 this year. That's barely 1% more than what our superintendent is earning right now. The governor of California. If you want to work in the corporate world and receive corporate wages, then you should do that. And if you want to serve in the corporate world so that you can dispense corporate levels of compensation, then you should do that. But this is Sonoma County, and this is a taxpayer-funded agency, and it's education. And all we know is that we don't have that kind of money to spend.
Thank you. John Cortopassi, then Tawny Johnson, then Leslie Thomas. John Cortopassi?
He's on here.
Okay. Tawny Johnson, then Leslie Thomas.
Hi, I'm not Tawny Johnson. She had to leave. And I'm actually speaking on behalf of a teacher at Montgomery High School, Margaret Boone. I'm Catherine Howell, Lawrence Cook Middle School. I got up here and spoke about our issues with attracting and retaining classified staff a couple of months ago. Since then, the board has passed a raise for our CSEA members of 7.5%. 7.5% is a decent raise, but it doesn't bring our classified staff anywhere near where they need to be. It doesn't bring them up to a living wage. This was highlighted to me recently when I was in a transition IEP meeting and I was told my student would be paid $12 an hour for his entry-level job in his transition class at SCO. I thought that was a generous salary for a student working in a training program, but in fact, that is minimum wage. That got me to thinking about how much I had been paid when I first started at Santa Rosa City Schools as an assistant in one of our moderate classes at Santa Rosa High. I thought I had made $11.83 an hour. I went home and dug up my old pay stubs, and sure enough, I did. At that time, the minimum wage was $8 an hour, so I made $3.83 more than minimum wage, or 148% of minimum wage. Currently, our SH assistants make 128% of minimum wage. They've actually lost money over the years since I became a teacher. They've lost 20%. If they made the equivalent amount to what I made in 2011, SH instructional assistants would start out at $17.75 an hour. And our lowest paid classified staff wouldn't be making $13.01 an hour as they will with their new raise. They'd be making $14.96. Tonight, the board is being asked to consider a raise of 17.5% for our superintendent when our classified staff are making 20% less than they made 8 years ago. I think until we can bring up our most underpaid employees to even an amount equivalent to what the district paid in 2011, we shouldn't be giving our highest paid employees double-digit raises. Money needs to be allocated where it's needed the most. Thank you.
Thank you. Leslie Thomas, then Gabe Albavera, and Tammy Afonso.
Members of the board, my name is Leslie Thomas. I urge you, do not approve the disproportionately high raise for top district officials. Along with everybody else that's here tonight, I have a vested interest in seeing Santa Rosa City Schools succeed and thrive. Part of that reason is because I taught for this district for 9 years and recently resigned, although that's a topic for another day. But in addition to that, I am the daughter and the niece of long-time educators within this district. I grew up in this district. I literally grew up in the district K through 12. I'm a proud Doyle Park Dragon, Slater Spartan, and Montgomery Viking. In August, I will be the parent of a Santa Rosa City School student, and also I am a taxpayer here. So when I wanted to speak, I had to think, what do I want to talk about? Well, we've heard before the initial offers, the 1%, versus the 29%, and that was huge, and that's been talked about. To be fair, there was some movement, so I thought about that. Teachers settled for 7% over 2 years, and I think it's somewhere around 18% over 2 years that's being talked about. So I did the math, though I'm not a math major, I hope my math is correct. For an incoming teacher, because we know where there's lots of resignations and lots of new hires, an incoming teacher after 2 years will see an increase of $3,500, but the superintendent will see an increase of $35,000. $3,500 versus $35,000 after 2 years. So I thought about, what is $35,000? Well, that's about what the salary of an elementary school office manager is. And in my opinion, that is the most important person on campus. The school will literally fall apart without her. And I know that from experience. So her salary is what the superintendent stands to get as a raise. It just feels like a slap in the face. My strong feelings, please understand, are not personal. They don't reflect my feelings about the superintendent or how she's doing her job. I'm not against Dr. Kitamura, but I am for all the staff members who are overworked, underpaid, and unable to support their families. I have teacher friends who are single parents renting 2-bedroom apartments. They expect that in 2 years they will be priced out of the city. As a parent of a child going into Santa Rosa City Schools, that scares me. What is going to happen to my daughter's teachers? With all due respect, I don't believe the same stress is happening to our top administrators, the stress of not being able to pay your rent. Please make the right choice. The top administrators should get the same raise that teachers negotiated. As it is, 7% of their salary is a whole lot more than 7% of our salaries. Thank you.
Gabe Albavera, then Tammy Afonso.
Good evening. My name is Gabe Albavera, and I am a administrator, but I'm also a parent here at Santa Rosa City Schools. I decided to come up here to speak on the concerns that some might have about our superintendent and the cabinet's proposed pay raises, as well as some of my concerns about the narrative that has been passed along to the public by the opposition. Again, my respects to the teachers and the hard work that they do. But as much as I understand why some people might have a problem with the raise, let me explain why I am part of the minority in this room, but not in this community, of the pay raise. In no particular order, The graduation today, if it wasn't for Diane, it wouldn't have happened. Special opportunities for our students. The work that's been done during the fires, organizing our schools, having sites, be shelters, cleaning our schools, getting financial support for our students, families, SRCS employees who lost their homes. The work with theory of action, coherence, SRPD relationships, Sheriff's Department, community-based organizations, First Five, Boys and Girls Club, SAYK, mental health services, feeder school district superintendents from other districts, as well as relationships with our county office. Student Voice Collaborative, which is what we've been talking about today. Policy 25-day rule, another great example. Focus on our student socio-emotional supports. College and career counselors and centers, elementary school counselors, female board members that we have today of color. This is the work that has been done. School board members of color. The specialized certificate discussion, the work with Sister Karina Huey that got a lot of us emotional that evening. With all that, as well as discussions on actions of the following: ethnic studies, culturally relevant curriculum, scaffolding, grading practices, standard-based grading versus traditional grading, unduplicated student count. I didn't even know what unduplicated student count meant until Diane came on board. Restorative practices, family engagement, student activity workers, focus to designate EL students, restorative response specialists, A through G discussion and policy that's been passed, strong DLAP membership, DAC, SUN, discussions on equity, Museum of Tolerance, unconscious bias training, the disproportionality of students being suspended of color, Latino, African American, suspension rates, expulsion rates. Why is this important? Because students of color were getting expelled at a high rate. I think we forgot about that. I got 20 seconds, so I'll just end with this. In closing, the cabinet, the board, and the leadership, Diane has done more for SRCS students and families and staff than any other leader or group leaders in Sonoma County, if not the state. They've also made sure that all students and families have a voice, including the students and families who historically were quiet or not listened to. I myself can say that I am not only a better administrator, but a better man, a better parent, and now a grandparent because of the cabinet and the leadership. Thank you.
President Alfonso.
Good evening once again. While CSEA agrees that all employees deserve to make a living wage, the board tonight is showing that they recognize that we need to have salaries that will attract and retain qualified employees. We also anticipate that we will be given the same consideration from the district and the board when it comes to our 2020 salary compensation study. And when it begins, that it be when we begin its implementation, raising the classified salary to the average of the state salary. We are the underpaid. We are the ones you walk in the door in the morning and you see, and we're the ones at the evening when your child leaves, you also see. We need your help. This will also help get us to a goal of $15 an hour, and I'm not sure who decided that that was a living wage, because I don't know anyone who can work 8 hours a day, $15 an hour, have a child, and afford insurance for that child, because it doesn't happen. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Seeing no more blue cards, I'm going to pull it back to the board and for discussion. And I'm actually going to start that off as an individual board member. You know, the board president generally gives kind of a wrap up, and I want to make sure that the comments that I give now are mine and mine alone, because they have to do, at least in part, with kind of the history of Superintendent Kitamura's hiring. And I mentioned in our overview report that when she came in, was hired, that her competitors that she stood head and shoulders above, the board believed unanimously, made a significant amount more than her. And there was a discussion amongst the board on that day, and I will tell you that I was a minority in this discussion around Superintendent Kitamura's willingness to take less because she cared about students. And it struck me on that day that that's just not something that people say about men. It's just not. It's not something people ask. It's not something people say, and perhaps periodically, but as a rule, there's a reason, or there's some reason why men's salaries continue to grow and women's don't in negotiated positions. And nobody said about our other finalists, maybe they'll take a $25 or $52 or $76,000 pay cut because they care about students. We did say that about Superintendent Kitamura, though, and we didn't give her what she asked for. We gave her $200, which at the time was, looks like more than 25% less than the average of comparable districts. Now, I asked in this process for a history of our superintendent salaries, and there was a time when we paid average to our comparable districts. And that was in 2004 when there was a white guy being a superintendent. He made $175,000, which at the time was the average of comparable districts. And after that, we hired a woman, Sharon Liddell, and she got a $30,000 pay cut. She got $145,000. And then her pay went up a little bit, and then wait, let me make sure I get the exact right number. And then when we hired our next female superintendent, she made about the same as Mel Soley, the white guy, a decade earlier, and was about 30% below the comparable average. And then when we hired Diane, we brought her up a little bit to 200 after we decided that she was a superior candidate to people who are coming in on average $52,000 more than a year, but we paid her still far below the state average. And at the time I disagreed with that, and I still do. And so to a certain extent, to me, this was about kind of righting a wrong that where I feel like I don't want to be part of something that is really like a nationwide, worldwide, I'm sure, epidemic in terms of how we value men and women in their positions. And there's a big disparity. So I do want to talk about that history. The second thing I want to say is that I absolutely believe that you are all underpaid. Every one of our employees is underpaid. And in the state, in our district, in our county, in our state, in our nation, educators are underpaid. And I think that, we're fighting this fight everywhere we can with the people who have the actual power and that's at the state level. And in the meantime, there are lots of us who are fighting a fight on a local level to try to say, what can we do locally while the state's not doing its job in funding education? Because right now we're battling over not a lot of money left. And in our recent this salary package that's proposed on the agenda tonight between the 5 cabinet members will cost $144,000 over 2 years. The combined salary raises for the rest of our staffs, because it was really big, is gonna cost 14.2, and it's putting us in the red, and we're willing to do that because we wanna slowly bring everybody up. We're committed to doing that. We're committed to bringing people up as much as we can. And we'll all, and administrators and the rest, and our certificated staff will be about the same, below comparable average based after these contracts. And we're gonna still keep fighting for more money. I wanted to say too that one of the things I heard after negotiations is that something that really hurt teachers on a personal level was our initial offer of 1%. Yeah, I hear that. And that was it was a board decision. across the board, and there are kind of different ways to negotiate things. There's a, we're gonna start here, and you're gonna start here, and we're gonna meet in the middle somewhere, and that's really the standard, most common way to negotiate. Interestingly, it's really not how I advise like my clients in my job how to negotiate. It's not really how I negotiate. I'm much more of a straight shooter professionally. I say, this is what we've got, you know, let's do this, let's not do that, it's hurtful. And I regret not taking more leadership over that at the time and saying, let's not do that, because I can see how that could be hurtful, and so I apologize for not recognizing how much of a punch in the gut for that could be. At the time, we can only negotiate with the money that we have, and we had a certain budget, and at the time we didn't want to negotiate until February after we got the governor's budget mid-January, so we knew what we had. And so it really was at the moment, you know, all we had to do, and it was too early for us to go to SCO and say, please support us if we go in the red, and somehow we'll come up with the money, and we're gonna hope the state does the right thing, and that we don't have to get taken over in 2 years, which will happen now if we don't, if the state doesn't come up with more money, because right now our multi-year projection puts us far in the red. But we took that risk, you know, for you and for the district. But still, that's the hill I should have died on, is when we were negotiating, not the 1%. That was a mistake, and I apologize for that. So I do. Now, at this point, you know, right now there's a reality, and the reality is that everybody's underpaid, and we also have to compete at certain positions, and we're trying to bring people up. So we're bringing CSEA up as quickly as we can, as we're bringing SRTA up. I know that we made some big adjustments in nurses and psychologists, so that the average actual pay increase on that front was 26% with our new contract, because they were far below the average. Some as high as 52%, some around 7%, but on average that was a 26% bump in 1 year, and that's because that was far below average. So we're trying to look at kind of the district financial ecosystem and say, how can we be competitive, and what is far below average? How do we not continue to get poached, and how can we do that and afford it? And it's hard, it's a hard balance. It's a hard balance. So we're doing our best, and those are the comments that I had personally, just based on sort of the history that I bring to this. And with that, I'm going to call on any other board members who have things to say or discussion around this. Director Fong.
I don't usually write out my remarks, but I wanted to make sure I got it right, and so I apologize if I'm kind of reading. So this is really my first rodeo on a superintendent contract. I think it's all of ours, almost all of ours, except for president. And there wasn't a week or a day that went by of the last few weeks or months that we've been doing this that I haven't been thinking about this. And what it says about our values, and the comments that we've gotten back. And, you know, I've sought out many people's opinions about this, and, you know, we take it in and we try to understand and we try to put it in context. The feedback has mostly been centered on what's fair, like we heard tonight and we're hearing in the emails. It's really fraught with so many complex issues. It's just not sound bites, and it's really difficult to address deeply without long exploratory sessions about what we value and what it means and what unintended consequences are. And deep conversations on matters of importance really can't happen at board meetings, which is a huge frustration for me. We just kind of take input and then we just kind of pronounce back and then we vote. And that's how it goes. But that really isn't how we get to really deep community understanding. But that's the system. I'm very fond of this district. I'm very proud of this district and everybody in it. I'm gratified that we have active community partnerships, a deep and committed base of teachers and staff to provide the educational environment that we want to provide for our students and their families. You know, we're the big cheese in this county. The 40 districts look to us to see what we're doing in all aspects of education. In the years I've worked in this district, I've seen accelerating changes requiring more and more of each one of us, new demands. And I'm really pleased to note that I believe that Santa Rosa City Schools is really at the forefront of innovative change and what we're doing for kids and Albavera was mentioning a lot of them in 3 minutes, and we really can't do it without the entire staff, every single person that is executing the work for students in front of us, like I talked about earlier tonight. I know we all see this new work and feel this new work, and we're all willing to roll up our sleeves and do it. And like President Close says, you know, none of our educators are compensated the way we all believe they should be compensated. I've been saying that for a long time. So we understand that for many, many opinions, affording any more raise than what we afforded our staff flies in the face of parity or equity or equality or fairness. And it's confusing just to think about it with all the different words. The wealth gap in our country, the affordable living crisis, particularly in the Bay Area, the greater Bay Area, and the inadequacy of the educational funding system, they all contribute to all the varied emotions that we hold that inform our thoughts about a top leader's salary. We can compare the cost of an AP class with the cost of assistant superintendent or the cost of school secretary with a raise. We can do those kinds of comparisons, but they're just kind of false narratives in a way. We're all talking about too small of a pie for what we're supposed to be doing and the people who are working in it. So I thought a lot about how we do that, you know, that stair step thing. So if we were to tie, thinking hard, I've been thinking hard over the past month, I'm getting a headache. If we were to tie superintendent's salary to staff salaries, it would need to be a new board policy. And so we'd have a discussion about that. I mean, it's hardly reasonable to tie it to it now because it's kind of like it's over. It's not the fact when we hired the current superintendent or anyone before her or anyone in the state, actually. But what if we did that? What if we all put our heads together and you know, where do we start? We have to have discussions with everybody at the table about what's the base salary, what % beyond staff salaries we would use, what would be right. What about prospective applicants from then on in? Would anybody want to come work for us or be the superintendent? I'm wondering about unintended consequences, which we can't sometimes see. Would this tie our hands in securing the best leader for Santa Rosa City Schools? I don't know. Maybe they're going to think that this is how we should be doing things, and this is the best way to do it. So it's worthy of a discussion. Do we start this at our local school district? I mean, is this a discussion we want to have for the next few years? And maybe it's going to be a trend among school districts in the state, but you know, I'm willing to think about this stuff and how we do systems differently, as I always keep talking about systems, so I want to say the same thing for this. I'm not going to repeat some other stuff that Jenny said. Okay, I've seen my deep share of superintendents in Santa Rosa City Schools since I've been here since 1987. By far, as a teacher administrator, now a board member, I believe that Diane is a visionary, practical, get it done, and systems thinker. Santa Rosa City's we've had that is bringing vision to reality. You know, I won't keep talking about her, why we think she's doing a good job, because a lot of people are doing good jobs and maybe not getting the salary that they need or want or deserve. It's kind of like we hardly ever get what we deserve, do we? It is to say that we do have a very fine superintendent, and that when we go out to find another superintendent, and we will need to go out and finally find another superintendent, it will be a high bar with a commensurate salary, commensurate and comparable salary that we will have to come up with. And I don't know what that's going to be, but it's going to be difficult, and we're going to have another big conversation about that when it comes. When I look at the dollar amount that this raise is going to cost us for Diane and the assistant superintendents, it's really not a heavy lift. Dollar amount. The entire management's raise is costing the district less than an eliminated assistant superintendent that they have all taken on this work. We've heard that before. This raise is doable in our budget. It's not very much. paying the Santa Rosa City School Superintendent this salary, as we have researched and carefully researched, because we wanted to make sure we had the right context, we had the evidence to back ourselves, and we weren't just pulling a number out of the air because we thought it felt good. We need to do this. I'm considering the future. How do we keep generating faith in Santa Rosa City Schools for leaders to come our way if we are still dead last in comparably sized districts for superintendent compensation? One of the things that the board has been working on recently is a new strategic plan, and I am so proud of this plan because I hope you're gonna like it. You're gonna see it, everyone's gonna get to weigh in on it before it's finalized. But part of it is really talking about our staff, how we value people, and how we show that. The number we settled on is reasonable. It's still quite low. It's under the average of comparably sized districts in our greater Bay Area. And we really look at data to inform ourselves, and I believe it's a reasonable number.
Anyone? Director McCormick.
I'm going to kind of come at this. I know we're speaking specifically on the agenda item about the superintendent's proposed raise, but I'm going to kind of speak in general about the raises for the whole cabinet, so know that. And I'm also, I'm going to try not to repeat things that have already been said, but I want to reiterate that a significant amount of time, energy, thoughtfulness, creativity has gone into this second proposal. We pulled the first one, the second one that we bring to you today. And I want to talk to you kind of from the perspective of a teacher. And so I have talked to a lot of you and heard from a lot of you about this issue, and it is clear to me that the majority of the frustration lies in when you're looking at percentages on these raises, that you don't feel valued, and you feel that this board is valuing top administrators more than it's valuing teachers. So I understand how that feels. I've felt it myself. And I know we're probably in a climate where you're not going to believe me when I say this, or some of you won't, but I can tell you that it is not true, that you are valued, that everybody up here values you. I have a deep understanding of the time, talent, energy, expertise it takes for you to do your job. And it's not really a job, it's a calling. It's a calling of service to our students, our families, and our community. So I really, truly know what you do and how it feels to grind on a daily basis, putting forth your best every day for the benefit of our students and the district. And I value you, and I value that. Now, when it comes to our top level administrators, and I can say this in all honesty, I mean, I've only been on this board for 6 months or so. I really was unaware of the enormity and the collectiveness of the responsibility that our top administrators in this district have. And so I know personally as a teacher that I get involved in department things, curriculum development, fundraising, budget. I get involved in those things because I care, and I'm trying to figure out ways to get resources so that I can do a better job for my students. But when it really comes down to it, I only have to focus on my students. And for 24 years, I've had over hundreds of students every year. The enormity of being responsible for every faculty member, every staff member, every student, every school, every facility is huge. And I have just gotten a little look into what our top administrators do in the last 6 months, and I'm impressed. I don't know how they do what they do in 24-hour days, 365. And I know in contracts, and there's negotiated this and negotiated that, and we have a certain amount of work days that we get paid for, but these people are on call 24/7. And at any moment, I'm just giving you my experience, at any moment in the last 6 months that I've had a question or concern about something related to this board, it's taken one text and about 2 minutes for somebody to answer me back. And that's at all times of the night, weekends, holidays, whatever. We are committed and attempting to bridging these pay gaps as a board and as a district in classified, certified, and administration. We are committed. This group of people up here, we are committed to that. And I feel strongly that these proposed raises are valid and necessary and crucial so that we can keep fighting for higher pay for all of us. I really gotta say that we might agree and disagree on certain things as they come up, but the team that we have right now, you want this team fighting for you, and I can tell you that they are. They're fighting for you, and they're fighting for your students. This is the team I would want fighting for me. And when I was a teacher in this district, I didn't really know the team, behind what was going on. And even at where I work at the JC, what I've learned in the last 6 months, I'm paying a lot more attention to the top administration and what they're doing for us. And I'm just speaking my truth on this. And I really believe that people make the program, and that the people we have here are working hard for this program. But we also need to separate from the people that are currently in these positions and put ourselves in a position in the future to continue to attract leaders and be competitive, just the same way we need to raise up classified and raise up certified salaries so that we can attract people for the future of this district. I've been a long-time member of this district as a student, and then a teacher, and as a parent, and I care as much about this district today as I did when I was a kindergartner, as I will as when I'm a grandparent and when I'm long gone. I care about this district. And so when I'm making these tough decisions, and I am in support of these decisions tonight, I'm not just looking about today, and I know it's uncomfortable today, but I'm also trying to make these decisions on behalf of where we're going in the future so we can keep moving forward and fight together.
Thank you. Director Medina has raised his hand.
That was my digital hand. This is a difficult decision indeed. I think the very simplistic public narrative is disproportionate increase compared to teachers and classified staff, and on its face, I think that definitely seems unjust, but there's many layers to this decision. It's not, for me, it's not an easy decision to make, but at the same time, I feel that in part, we're working towards undoing prior injustices in an affirmative vote on this decision. Right now, I'm still kind of questioning how exactly I vote, but I think I know how I'm voting. I think that in our current superintendent, one of my experiences, having been connected to this district for 28 years in one way or another, I've seen bold leadership that aligns with my values and that aligns with addressing issues that have not been addressed for a long time. And I value that despite a lot of tension, I see the value that our superintendent works in terms of advocating and finding ways to do more to address some of the systemic issues that we have in terms of salaries for both classified and certificated staff. And I feel that we're working in the right direction. I don't think that because a couple groups aren't getting as much, that should mean that we shouldn't address this issue. And so I think it's very important that we keep that in mind. There's many layers of historical inequity that I think we're trying to address here. I feel that I can't wait to move on past this decision, and I would like to see us collectively then try to reboot and reset and work towards the vast progress that I feel we're making as a district. I think that money is often referred to as the root of all evil, and I feel that money is constantly a cause of problems within school districts, and it's a cause of tension, and it continues to be so. But I think that we have to focus on our youth and our students, and I think once we move past this, I hope that we could continue to work to bring everyone else up, and that's what I hope that we strive towards doing, and I feel that the superintendent is committed to that, and I think that's why I'm definitely thinking that I'm going to vote to support this contract. And even though I know it's not the thing that really aligns with the majority of sentiment of the public, I am very thankful to the public for bringing the amount of pressure that's being brought on this issue to highlighting the inequity of it all. It's part of the democracy that I think we depend on. But I think there's all these layers that I'm definitely that I have to consider, and that align with like some of the values that I hold very important. I will add that I feel it's very important that as a board, we stand united in the decision of these staff that we hire, and the staff being our one employee. And I think that that's something that's important, because we have to collectively say yes or no to whether we agree with where we're going. And I think that's one of the big factors that's pushing my ultimate decision. That's all I'm going to say.
Thank you, Director Medina. Director Sheffield, and then Director De La Cruz.
Thank you. I do appreciate hearing and receiving the hundreds of comments from the public on this agenda item, and I do appreciate your patience on it. As you know, the proposed salary increases for the superintendent has been agendized and re-agendized over the past many weeks, in part due to the gravity of what's being considered, but also because of the timing of it. And in regards to the latter, the timing, I've heard from dozens of you about the proposal of top-level pay raises following a very long and contentious fight that the teachers had for a 7% pay increase. And I agree that the timing is terrible, it's insulting, the optics are terrible, I hate it all. Now, in response, is it ever a good time to highlight the disparity between an agency's CEO and its average paid employee. It wasn't 2 months ago when we started this process. It's not now. It won't be in 2020. So we have to address it. And the reason why it's insulting is because there's always going to be insult and injustice felt by others. And in this case, rightfully so, for all the reasons that you had brought up in public comment. The cost of living in the North Bay mostly, how difficult it is to be a teacher in Sonoma County, absolutely. For the board, it took us 2 months of deliberating and of negotiating, of bargaining, of reasoning to get to the proposal that was presented tonight. And I definitely appreciate my fellow directors for giving us the presentation and taking the time to put that together. For many, it does put things into perspective. For a lot of the reasons that were presented tonight, we, the board, we're tasked with fixing what we see as a problem. We may have started out being very eager. We were too thirsty to correct an injustice that we saw, the salary of our superintendent, of our superintendents. But then we heard from the public, and that's part of the process, and that's really important. And we made a lot of adjustments in that time. The methodology that was discussed was precise, and it was considerate. As was stated, we looked at the average superintendent salaries across the state, regionally. We looked at the districts of comparable size, and we considered the job description when we came up with the numbers. And in the process, we did discover that city schools is below Bay Area averages on superintendent pay. We're below average on pretty much pay across the board. And this has been the case for a long time. And the situation, because it has not been addressed fully, has exasperated. Obviously, it's the same with the teacher pay. So now we have two situations that need to be fixed. First is the ongoing battle of compensating our teachers at a respectable level, and the second is paying our executives, our superintendents, at the right level. And the classified staff, all of our staff. I'll get to that. In regards to teachers being underpaid, I cannot be convinced that somehow that it's the district's fault through any degree of mismanagement. But this doesn't matter because all of you feel undervalued. Undervaluing our teachers is a state issue, and it's district by district throughout California. This is exactly the reason why we're seeing the striking in the larger districts, and it's trickling into districts of our size. The cost of living. You've heard it before. I'll say it again. California underfunds public education, K through 12. In regards to teachers and their hard bargaining contract for the 7% increase, it's disheartening that we still fall woefully short of state and regional take-home pay averages. And so it is understandable that you feel undervalued. But again, it has nothing or little to do with how the district manages its resources, and everything to do with state dollars and how insufficiently California values K through 12. But back to the superintendent's salaries, it's the same thing. We're below state and regional averages on districts of comparable size. Now, this is an opportunity for the board to correct at least one of the wrongs that's been created, and doing something that won't impact our budget, and it will bring us closer to Bay Area averages. And if we don't take action, we're essentially kicking the can down the road even further than we already have. For Superintendent Kitamura, we first kicked the can down the road when she was promoted to superintendent without a pay increase, and this was a board decision. Then the board kicked the can down the road even further when it accepted her decision to pass on a pay raise in 2016. And the irony is that, we wouldn't even be discussing this if the board had forced her to take a pay raise. So I guess we could say that Diane is at fault for getting us to where we are right now. As a result of her not getting paid adequately and the declining raises, we now have a situation that we have to address because we're not keeping up with the times. In response to the dollar amount of the superintendent pay, again, a lot of what has been brought up tonight and in comments over the past several weeks. I've heard the argument that superintendent pay is too high in the first place. And it is true, it is certainly a high-paying job. It requires a great deal of education, aptitude, and practice, like a surgeon, like a CEO of a company. Some have argued that Superintendent Kindabar's pay is too much. But consider the job description. The superintendent's responsible for the day-to-day operations and general maintenance of over 24 facilities, 24 school sites included. She's responsible for the education and safety of 16,000 students. That's twice the entire population of the city of Sebastopol. Administrating 1,600 employees, faculty, and staff. Managing a $180 million budget. So whether you agree with the superintendent's pay or not, this is a challenging job that does require a certain caliber of applicant. So I'm going to wrap it up. Where I'm at on this, I'm committed to doing everything it takes to get the district, the entire district, up to where it needs to be on all salaries. In regards to the superintendent's salary, budget-wise, it is low-hanging fruit. It's something that we can fix and will not impact the budget this year or have any impact on future deficit spending. Moving forward with my vote tonight, I will support the agenda item. I'm also declaring my sincere commitment to bringing all district employees to or above regional averages in the next contract negotiations, despite how reckless it may be, despite recession and future economic outlooks, despite declining enrollment, despite CalSTRS and CalPERS adjustments, despite insurance costs, despite breaking the bank on the district budget. And maybe it's because Santa Rosa is now, as was pointing out earlier tonight, the 5th most expensive city for teachers to live in. Thank you, President Lyon. To me, if it means breaking the district budget in order to get a message across to the governor and the state of California, all of our officials, our representatives, that public schools are underfunded, then that's the challenge that I'm willing to take on. So that's what I have to say on this position. Thank you.
Thank you, Director De La Cruz, and then Director Manieri.
Thank you all for coming out and for hanging as long as you have. Thank you for the hundreds of emails. I really want to acknowledge how powerless and undervalued this makes you feel. You can see it, we can hear it. I'm grateful that you continue to raise your voices. And I want to echo the commitment of my colleagues that we are dedicated to making sure that those injustices that you feel and that you have experienced are made whole, that you are able to feel valued and feel seen by this board. And that's going to take every single one of us working together and to continue this conversation with respect. So I really want to invite, I'm going to have an Ed Sheffield moment, all of you to continue this conversation. And I want to share my cell phone number, because the number of emails that I got that were in all caps and with exclamation points weren't the kind of conversation that I would really love to have with you all. I am, as your newest board member, really thinking about the ways in which we engage and interact with each other. And I would love to hear from you one-on-one, face-to-face, coffee, phone calls, so that we can continue to learn from each other, so we can hear what we have the privilege and perspective of learning from where we sit and making sure that we deeply understand and feel what you experience every day. 707-974-3904. also want to acknowledge how uncomfortable and personalized this decision is, Diane. That's really hard, and because this is about you, but it's also about the context in which you sit, in the body that you're in, and in the history of the way that body has been treated by our institutions. And so when we talk about the race and gender of somebody that we are trying to figure out how to value, we're not saying that anything for or against that is good or bad. It's not calling out somebody as racist or sexist for opposing this action. I want to make that really clear. It's just making sure that we understand the context that we're all operating in, the privileges and the lack of privilege that many of us have experienced over time, the feminization of the teaching profession, of staff. The reason why you're underpaid is because largely this industry is about women. For our staff, it's largely about women and people of color. And that history of underpaying and undervaluing those bodies, that's the context that we need to make sure that we're just thinking about as we make these decisions. And with that doesn't come a judgment about a good or a bad. It just makes sure that we understand the history that we experience together. Here's what I'm prioritizing with the support of this decision: continuity and stability for our students, our staff, our teachers. Micah, you made a really important point early today where you talked about the single biggest cost to an institution is churn. And we need to avoid that here. We really need to figure out how to continue to respectfully engage with each other at every single level of this conversation. And by righting all of these wrongs that you and Diane and her staff have experienced over time, let's avoid that churn together, because that is deeply costly to the amazing work that has been done, that I've seen over the last 3 months has blown my mind. It's also wrong for us to put that all on one person. I want to recognize the work of a team, and that the creation of that team is about you all choosing your leaders, elevating the people that you see every day in your classrooms be helpful and useful to you, making sure that you have a voice in the way that those leaders are chosen. That's the system that has resulted in this team. And I really want to thank you for helping to ensure that we do what we can to support the continuity, the stability, and the respect that continues, that will need to continue in order for us to move forward together. This doesn't have a huge impact on our budget, that's been said before. But I really want to recognize the ways in which this decision may impact our relationship moving forward. That's right, I hear you. I really get that. It is a gut punch to have been offered 1%. That hurts. I'm sorry that you went through that. I also want to recognize the leadership that it took for this board to recognize that humongous error in judgment and that amount of that action. We recognize that that was wrong. We're making a commitment that that's not going to happen again. So I just want to share in those commitments that we've made tonight to you all, to this community, that we will do everything to fight to make sure that you are on par with our regional averages, that you feel and see the respect and the value that we all have for what you do every single day with our kids. $13 an hour is not a minimum, is not a living wage. 15, I think, who said it? Who made that a living wage? So let's work together and let's continue this conversation and make sure that we are able to ride this wave get over this hard decision, and continue to move forward together. Adelante.
Thank you. Director Manieri.
There's not a lot that more than I can say or share that my colleagues haven't already. So what I really just want to reiterate, being the last the last director to speak before the president speaks again, I just really want to reiterate how much we value the relationships. I mean, when I think about community, and I'm gonna get emotional, because I always do, but also because Mr. Albavera really touched me, Principal Albavera, Mr. Albavera, when I was in high school. Because all of those things that he mentioned were not available to me. And some of those things continue to not be available to my cousins who are still in school because they're Native American and they're kids of color, and they're just treated differently. Not just by their peers, by adults too, that they've shared. So I just really want to commend the leadership that has changed this for a lot of students in our district, because so many students are impacted by this every single day. And I just want to say that the relationships and that we have with one another, I mean, just like what I experienced and what my cousins continue to experience, the relationships are either what empower them, empower me, empower us to continue to move forward, to engage respectfully and operate in a way that is human, or the other side of that is that when the relationship breaks, we get stuck and we don't get anything accomplished and we don't grow and we don't learn. And so I just really want to emphasize the commitment that this board has toward righting a lot of wrongs, so many that predate even just, the longest person that's been sitting here on this board. So I just really want to reiterate that is a firm commitment that this board has. And I just call every single one of us to think about how important the relationships that we have with one another are, because they're really the only thing that are gonna keep us moving forward. That's all I wanted to share.
Thank you. Director Medina has additional comments.
I just need to say that, everything I just stated, I wholeheartedly believe, like, everything that I stated. I think that we have a great superintendent. I think that this proposed pay is definitely not enough, but simultaneously, I stated earlier that I keep going back and forth, and like just sitting here, like there's a feeling in my gut that I have that just it doesn't sit right with me, and I think it's in part because there is no, it's like there's no right thing, and yet everything is wrong. But at the same time, I'm feeling like I'm going in part against the core of who I am in a way, and it's having a big impact on me right now, because part of who I am and what I stand for is a sort of justice. My background is in organizing and advocating for workers, and I think I'm feeling like a big gut check, and it's a big gut too. And so I don't know. At this very second, I'm going back and forth in terms of what my final vote is going to be, and I don't know what the consequences of how I vote is, but I just needed to preface it with saying that I value our superintendent and what she does, and however I decide to vote in the end, it's about my gut feeling and my core conscience and the core values of who I feel that I am and what I feel best represents me. That's all.
Thank you. Okay. We've been at this for a while, and I don't want to repeat a lot, but I do just want to wrap up a little bit, and say, it really may not feel like it, and frankly, I don't blame you if you don't believe us right now, but this board is committed to bringing everybody up, and there's some evidence for that. When I started, there's $500 on benefits, and now there's $7,500, and even though I'm the longest serving board member, I've only been here for 6 years. That's a pretty major increase, and that, by the way, came from a plan that came from this superintendent. There have been raises across all of our staff. Are they enough? No, they're not. Is there enough money? No. In fact, we will be in the red if we don't do something from some more money from the state. If we don't get more money from this $14.2 million commitment that we made to you, isn't possible. But we're taking that leap of faith, and we're taking that leap of faith, and we're also making that commitment. And we talked about our strategic priorities that we've been working on, and I want to share one to you that is unique to this board ever, because it comes outside our normal charge. It comes totally outside what our basic responsibilities for, but it's something that we're committing to, and I want to read it to you because we all believe in it, and we're all working on it in addition to the time and effort we put in our regular charge, and that is priority number 7, although I would have made it priority 1, frankly, just because I feel this kind of underlies everything we're able to do, and it's sustainable funding. We should have a punchier name. I think we should work on that. Oh yeah, Rick, can you pull it up? And I'll read it. SRCS believes that the chronic underfunding of public education. SRCS believes that the chronic underfunding of public education in California is unacceptable and undermines the health of our community. The current funding levels limit student outcomes and staff compensation. The SRCS board commits to working with our community to create additional funding opportunities and to being consistent and fierce advocates for full and fair funding from the state of California. That is a commitment that we are making. And there are lots of us who have been working on that, have been working on housing options, who are deep in our, in our late hours and our off days and in between all of that, working on that and for you. And so I know it must be hard to believe right now, but I will reiterate what each of my board members says, and that we are fighting for you, and we are committed to that. And we also have to be competitive in our highest levels of leadership, and that's where this comes from. And I want to finally just say a second, recognize the superintendent and her assistant superintendents, which she'll talk about in the next item, but for their negotiation in this process, because let me tell you, it's not very often when people negotiate against themselves. But your staff did. This board is very focused on the future and making sure that we have some stability and consistency, and we are able to provide strong leadership to make sure our finances are managed, strong leadership to make sure that our values are expressed in our procedures and our policies, strong management to make sure that we can govern a 1 million square foot set of facilities and one of the largest employee groups in the county and the largest student body for sure. And we have a commitment to that. And still, because of the feelings of the people that they work with every day, this staff negotiated against themselves. So this is a hard one. It's a hard one that doesn't sit well for any of us. I can tell you, and sometimes even when you make the right decision, it's really hard and really feels lousy. We had a public comment section, and I don't, and this is just a precedent that we don't do this. So
we can't hear her anyway.
Come up to the microphone.
All right, please fill out a card, and go to the microphone and speak. No, we're gonna have public comment. Yeah, you can fill out a card after, but we're gonna.
You can talk first.
Hold on. Here's the thing: is that it's real important that we're dealing respectfully and professionally, and also acting as examples for the 16,000 students that we serve. And so I don't want us to be in a shouting match. So I appreciate that you're going to sit at the podium and talk to us. And please go ahead, and you can give the blue card to Lori afterwards.
I'm very respectful, all of you. I know your job is really difficult, very hard. The only one thing I have to say, as sitting here, this is one of my first hearings that I sit at, okay? And I'm really disturbed at the fact that you guys are trying to fix a systemic issue nationwide in terms of gender and race in one sweep. Any change that happens has to happen incrementally, slowly. You can't just increase her pay by 18% just like that. It has to happen slowly. And just because there's the national issue about, race and gender in our country right now, doesn't mean that you're gonna right that wrong right now. And that's what that feels like. And you guys brought up the gender and race issue. We didn't. This is not about that. Superintendent, I've never met you before. I'm sure you're a lovely lady and you deserve this. But this is not what this is about. It's not about race and it's not about gender. Okay, it has nothing to do with that. It has to do with the fact that our teachers are not getting paid what they deserve. And all that slideshow that you did about your, the superintendent's, the reasoning why she deserves this pay, all you have to do is change the title to teachers. That's all you have to do. It's very simple. I'm sorry if I sound combative and angry. I'm just very passionate about people getting hit in the gut. Thank you.
Can you tell us your name, please?
My name is Alicia Said.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay. Okay, if there are no other comments, I'll call for a motion.
I move that we take action on F4, that we pass it. Let me pull it up, the whole thing. I've lost it. We approve the amended contract for the superintendent that includes a salary increase in 2020 and 2021.
I'll second.
Okay, moved by Director Fong, second by Director Sheffield. Are there any more discussion? Okay, roll call vote, please.
Director Fong? Director Sheffield?
Aye.
Director De La Cruz?
Aye.
Director Manieri?
Aye.
Director McCormick?
Aye.
Director Medina?
No.
President Close?
Aye. Motion carries. Thank you. Thanks, everybody.
Shame.
Okay, F5, action item, oral recommendation regarding Assistant Superintendent salary and fringe benefits. Discussion and board vote on Assistant Superintendent employment agreement. I thought you read it. Oh, Doing so much reading tonight. Oh, yes, you're right. Sorry. Okay, so I have to go through this exercise again of reading the basic terms of the 3 contracts that are up for action in this item. First one is Assistant Superintendent Ana Guzman's contract states that her salary during the 2019-20 school year will be $169,510. Contract provides that the Assistant Superintendent with the same access to health, dental, and vision benefits as other management employees. Finally, the contract provides for $3,600 as an annual reimbursement for automobile-related expenses. Assistant Superintendent Stephen Mazzara's contract states that his salary during the 2019-20 school year will be $166,186. Contract provides that Assistant Superintendent will have the same access to health, dental, and vision benefits as other management employees. Finally, the contract provides for $3,600 as an annual reimbursement for automobile-related expenses. Assistant Superintendent Stacy Spector's contract states that her salary during the 2019-2020 school year will be $159,794. The contract provides the Assistant Superintendent with the same access to health, dental, and vision benefits as the other management employees. Finally, the contract provides for $3,600 as annual reimbursement for automobile-related expenses.
Thank you, President Close. I think that the discussion prior under the F4 item for the superintendent's contract actually spoke to the rest of these for the deputy superintendent and the assistant superintendents. The comparable districts were the same comparables we used for the superintendent. You can see there's a difference in the 3 assistant superintendents due to their years of service. With that, I turn it back over to you, President Close.
Okay. Are there any specific questions for the superintendent from the board about these contracts? I have no blue cards on this. And Tammy, your comments, okay, I wanted to make sure that was correct. Any discussion on the item? Okay, this is an action item, so if there is no discussion.
I move that we pass the oral recommendation regarding the assistant superintendent salary and fringe benefits. Item F5.
I'll second.
Moved by Director Fong, second by Director Sheffield. Is there any further discussion?
Could we clarify the motion?
Yes.
I didn't hear it.
Lori, do you want to repeat that for Director Medina?
I move forward item F5, which is the oral recommendation regarding the assistant superintendent salary and fringe benefits on assistant superintendent employment agreement. There are 3 agreements.
Okay. Did you get that, Director Medina?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. That was moved by Director Fong, second by Director Sheffield. Seeing no discussion, I'll call for a roll call vote, please.
Aye. Director Fong? Director Sheffield? Aye. Director De La Cruz? Aye. Director Manieri?
Aye.
Director McCormick?
Aye.
Director Medina? Director Medina?
Aye, sorry, I was on mute. Aye.
No worries. President Close?
Before I vote, I just want to say that this must be incredibly difficult for all of you to sit here in public and have this kind of dialogue and listen to this kind of feedback, which is always a gift, though, about what you're paying. It's very personal, and your work is very hard, so we value your work and appreciate your service. And I will vote aye. That motion carries. Okay, and that brings us to F6, an action item, oral recommendation regarding Deputy Superintendent salary and fringe benefit discussion. And board vote on Deputy Superintendent employment agreement. And I will read that the main points of that contract, which is Deputy Superintendent Rick Edson's contract states that the Deputy Superintendent's salary during the 2019-2020 school year will be $175,000. Contract provides that the Deputy Superintendent will have the same access to health, dental, and vision benefits as other management employees. Finally, the contract provides for $3,600 as an annual reimbursement for automobile-related expenses.
As the previous two items, this is, again, comparable salaries are provided. Just to note that the CBO salary range was approved by the board in 2017 when we were going out to hire a CBO. So with that, I turn it back over to the board.
Thank you, Superintendent. Any questions from the board? I've got no blue cards. Any discussion, comments? I'll interject here that this is, we have a really strong cabinet, and everybody really steps up. Everybody steps up, but there's, no one could deny that one person's job has just morphed and grown like an out of control monster over the past few years, and you know, it was my joke that, you know, Rick, you've got 18 jobs, and it became close to true, I think, 18 jobs. And so I appreciate, you know, your work and your ability to take on more and more titles, and this, I feel like this, you know, brings you a little closer to being recognized for the many hats that you wear and the hours that you put in. Director Fong.
I move that we approve the oral recommendation regarding Deputy Superintendent salary and fringe benefits.
I'll second.
Moved by Director Fong, seconded by Director Sheffield. Roll call vote, please.
Director Fong?
Aye.
Director Sheffield? Aye. Director De La Cruz? Aye. Director Manieri?
Aye.
Director McCormick? Aye. Director Medina?
Aye.
President Close?
Aye. Okay, motion carries. All right. F7 is action item approval of amended scheduled management salary schedule for 2019-2020.
Good evening again, President Close, members of the board. We are recommending approval of the amended scheduled management salary schedule for 2019-2020. It recognizes the increased complexity of the role of the work of directors, as has been discussed in previous items this evening, and specifically the designation of the increase in work days from 203 to 223 for certificated management. This item also recognizes that there are several management positions that have been eliminated that no longer exist, and that the positions have been reduced from 28 to 15 in the classifications in this amended salary schedule.
Any questions from the board? Okay, discussion? Director McCormick?
I move to approve the proposed amended salary schedule for certificated and classified management.
Second that.
Moved by Director McCormick, second by Director Fong. I just want to say that this is a smart move to make sure that we have more director support for our teachers and principals, and so they can continue to work through more of the summer and make sure that our teachers and principals get the real support that they need, and the directors have time to provide that. So thank you, administration, for bringing this forward. Roll call vote, please, Lori.
Director McCormick?
Aye.
Director Fong? Aye. Director De La Cruz? Aye. Director Manieri?
Aye.
Director Sheffield?
Aye.
Director Medina?
Aye.
President Close?
Aye. Motion carries, and meeting adjourned.
Oh,
what? We do, oh my God. I hate it when I do that. I know that, sorry about that. This, you know, all this stuff was so heavy. It was Okay, you're right. F8, the action item, approval of letter of intent for request for application, California Department of Education, inclusive early education and expansion program. And thank you for hanging out. I'm so sorry.
President Close, members of the board, Dr. Kutamura, very glad to present to us, to you, an idea we have and the request for a letter of intent around what we're calling the Lewis Early Learning Center. This is not a name that's going to be in stone. We'll describe it later and what we're doing with it, but we have a really important presentation that we think is going to kind of take a lot of what we have with Lewis, take it to a new place. So with that, I'd like to have members of my team in our partnership today with Cap Sonoma Head Start introduce themselves.
Thank you. Good evening. My name is Lisa Grocott, and I'm the Director for Community Action Partnership of Sonoma County Head Start, Early Head Start Program.
And my name is Pat Turner. I'm the Assistant Program Director for Head Start, Early Head Start for Cap Sonoma County.
And I'm Janelle Plack, Program Manager for the Preschool Program for Santa Rosa City Schools.
And what we're doing tonight is we want to give you a little bit of idea of what's going on. It may not be something you're very familiar with, that we currently serve students from ages 0 to 3 and 3 to TK. We don't hear about that a lot, but there is a world out there that we want to introduce you to, a little bit about early learning. And so we'll kind of go through some programs and then talk about what we're hoping to do with our Lewis Center.
I was hoping we would draw a larger crowd to explain all of this, but.
We have 15 on YouTube, Janelle.
Okay, great. Thanks, everybody. So there's no real standard for these different ages and identifications or classifications. Different agencies and different groups call the age ranges different things, but in general, as you can see, 0 to 3-year-olds are infant or toddlers. In the special education world, we call it early start, and that's the world that I live in. 3 to 5-year-olds are preschoolers, and once students hit 5 years old, they move on to either TK or kindergarten and are considered school-aged.
So there are several models of early learning here in our county. We talk about state and federal subsidized preschool centers. That's going to be 4 Cs with the state and Head Start as federal. We have licensed family child cares in our community, small family child cares that can care up to for 6 children at a time, and our larger family child care for up to 12 children at a time. There's also unlicensed child care in the Family and Friends Network, where many of our children from birth to 5 are being cared for. So there's some differences with childcare versus preschool. Childcare can actually go all the way from birth to age 12. Childcare, when we refer to it, is oftentimes a full day and longer, 10, 11, 12 hours a day. So that's designed for working families and working parents. Preschool tends to have school readiness goals with the intended outcome to transition our children from the early care and education fields to our partners in the public school districts. In our county, generally, there are several ways that preschool is delivered to our children. Head Start and Early Head Start is our federally funded program, and we also have Early Head Start, who serves children birth to 3. Community Child Care Council, or the 4 Cs, runs many of our state subsidized programs. North Bay Children's Center is a large provider in our community. They do state funded as well as sliding scale fee for service. There's also private for-profit providers and non-public community preschools, of which we have 1 in our county. Cap Sonoma has 14 center-based programs in Sonoma County, and we serve our children and families with no fee. It is based on income eligibility and categorical eligibility. As I stated, North Bay Children's Center, they have 11 centers-based programs in Sonoma County, and they also serve children in Marin County. And they have the state subsidies and sliding scale fee for service. And then the 4Cs with 13 center-based programs in Sonoma County, and they are state subsidized based on income and need.
So those programs in Santa Rosa City Schools look like the following. We have Head Start programs and early Head Start programs in Lincoln, Ridgeway, Cook, and Lewis, and we have a North Bay Children's Center in Monroe and Steele Lane.
And then we have our Early Start program for the DHH program that is run by our district for the entire county, and that serves, again, the entire county. And we have our district preschool program for special education to serve our 3 to 5-year-olds, and that serves all of our preschoolers in the entire district.
A little bit more about Head Start and Early Head Start. We have been serving children and families using the whole family or 2-generation approach for the last 50 years. We strive to provide high quality early care and education for children in the ages groups of birth to 5. And our program provides targeted supports to move families from poverty to self-sufficiency. Our specific target population is low-income families living at 130% or below of the federal poverty guidelines. And as I mentioned, the program requirements, you are either income qualified or categorically eligible based on homelessness and children in foster care. Head Start specifically is required to serve 10% of our funded enrollment for children with special needs. We provide comprehensive services to the children and families, nutritious meals, health and dental screenings. We have a mental health consultant on staff. We do cognitive, social, emotional screenings, very specific child outcome assessment systems, family support for goal setting and attainment, a robust parent education program, and we also are our oversight body with the Parent Policy Council as well as our board of directors. And we are also involved in home visiting for pregnant moms.
Our North Bay Children's Center has very similar ideas. They have qualified teachers, they have strong effective programs, they have parent education classes, they offer both a subsidized childcare and an income, a sliding scale. They have a strong garden, what they call a Garden of Eden program and curriculum that they use in their model. They use a similar pyramid model to an MTSS, and they have a strong reader program. In Santa Rosa City Schools, special education learning looks like this.
We have our preschool speech and language clinic, and we'll talk about it's located at Lewis, and that's for our students who receive speech and language services only. They're served by 3 of our district speech and language pathologists. There are some students who need just a little bit more than speech and language services, perhaps some occupational therapy or some adaptive PE, in addition to their speech and language services, and that also happens at our Lewis campus. And then we have had a history of 2 special day classes for our preschoolers. This past school year, we increased to 3, and we are moving up to 4 to serve the very many students that we have with significant needs. And those are located at Steele Lane Elementary School.
We've also had for several years a strong partnership with CAP Sonoma by offering Avance and Pasitos at many of our elementary schools throughout Santa Rosa City Schools. And as you know, we also have had a partnership with Via Esperanza when it began, I think, 6 or 7 years ago. It was a partnership with First 5 as our funder, CAP Sonoma and us. And so that continues to be ways in which we're serving our families and our children in Sonoma County.
So early learning and inclusive education, there's a strong provision to move toward that, as that's in the K-18 or 18-year-old, we talk about mainstreaming, so there's something similar. And so what we're trying to do is provide availability for preschoolers to have access to special needs students to general ed preschools, allow what they call, of course, the least restrictive environment. It allows students with special needs to have access to their general peers, promotes greater cognitive, social, and community communication development, sense of belonging to their families, and is a very costly way to do services. What this is based on, of course, is the IDEA, Individual with Disability Education Act. The U.S. Department of Education policy statement is encouraging that, California Code, and CDE guidelines. And we say all this to bring this together to what we want to present as we move forward here. What we are envisioning here in a grant request is what we're going to call the Lewis Early Learning Center. So a map of Lewis below there identifies some of the rooms and how we articulate to do this. In the upper right side, you'll see an infant, preschool, and a TK program. What we hope to put in our grant is that that'll be spaces for Head Start, and we'll talk about that in a moment. Next to that, or just below that on the screen, is the SRCS preschool and TK kinder. What we want to do is take some programs from Steele and expand them and bring them to the same site so they are integrated with the programs we have there above in our infant, pre-K, and TK programs. On the other side of the buildings, we have existing, we told you we have our preschool speech, we have occupational therapy, we have something called California Children's Services already, and we have a DHH infant program. That's existing already at Lewis. What we want to add to that is a training component room that Ms. Grocott mentioned is important for parent education, and so we're trying to find space, and we'll show that of our vision. And of course, putting it all together is our wellness center, what you have there. That's an interesting hub that we want to bring a dynamic into our grant request. So what we're looking at is our Head Start rooms. This is kind of what we'd hope to see. This is looking from the backside. Those are the 4 portables. At this point in our early part of the grant, we're looking at Head Start being 3 of those, and then we're looking for a 4th partner, and we're starting communication with North Bay Children's Center, POPS, to be the 4th partner. So ideally, as we write this grant, we hope to have 4 preschool or infant programs that we'll bring to this site, and those are 4 new programs, not moving from an additional one, and our providers can speak to try to get to the lack of preschool programs and child care programs we have in our community, and this would make a huge dent in that program, or toward that. Our preschool programs there, those are the preschool special ed programs that we hope to bring online, and that obviously is where space we have, and then we'd be able to integrate those students to the preschool infant programs we have on campus. You mentioned the parent education room, so these are examples, these are the rooms we already have at Lewis that are not being utilized right now, and we hope to bring those into our coordination of the program. Now, incidentally, we're also talking about another thing, which is a Via Esperanza. So in a moment, I'll talk about there's an overlap of what we need to do with the facility. And we talked obviously about our family wellness and our engagement in our family wellness center, and all that being available on school site. As we work into this, we think this will become a hub for adding medical care, counseling care, things for parents and children that we already have existing. The strength of this is we are already using Lewis as the health of the community. I had an interesting conversation with a prominent community member who says they already feel how Lewis and the changes we've been doing with Lewis, with a wellness center and other, are already bringing back to life that center and that formula. And what you have here is a picture of going on this week is our California Children's Center. This is the Walker Summer Camp, so these are our students, disabled students that are using walkers and are part of their program, and that's their summer program, and that's going on at Lewis already. And we think that by bringing this as an early learning center, we'll bring this hub together for many, many causes. So what we're proposing here is we have a number of phases we want to do to this project. Phase 1 is identifying the funding and the commitments. Phase 2 is some initial occupancy for Via, Pasitos, and Avance. Phase 3 is construction, and Phase 4 is the additional funding opportunity, the grant that we hope to obtain. So here's a quick dynamic of what that means. So, as you all know, CCLA and Lewis are in a transformation themselves because CCLA and Cook are merging together, and that requires that we have to move off-site via Pasitos and Avance. And so what we propose to do in one of the phases is to bring them to Lewis and allow them at least a 1-year transition while we are further developing the site. So what that looks for us is that we have to start moving forward on our grant. Excuse me, that's probably phase 2. So let me do that. So while we are going through this process, we want to move Avance and Pasitos to where the red arrows are, and Via Esperanza over to the Lewis Center. So we're providing strength for those programs and moving them to the areas and use that space while we are going through this same process of increase in funding, getting additional funding, and doing the build that we're describing. So going back, our next phase for us is to move forward, if the board chooses tonight, to do a letter of intent. Then we have to begin working with Head Start. Head Start already has a grant that they need to begin operating that we need to do concurrently through this. We would like to bring that Head Start grant through an MOU back by the July 24th board meeting. At the same time, we have to begin some architect study and do other things that'll help us move forward on the grant. Phase 3 is then moving over Avance, Pasitos, starting the architectural scope and design, creating timelines, because we have to create the bid, so the letter of intent that we're describing tonight actually has to go to a letter of or a request for application and proposal by September 27th. So as we submit that, we'll know if that gets funded in November. And so what we're hoping to do is move forward with the Head Start proposal, begin operating the architect study, the bid, understand the preparation for that site, wrap that into our learning grant that we send in September, and hope to get that funded by November. And that then builds out our total grant and process. Those timelines are obviously very open at this point. We don't know the size of the build, we don't know the length and the bids and all those things. Those are, of course, what we're hoping to do is be able to open some of the site by summer of 2020. So for that, I know that's a lot of information. Obviously what we're doing is we're bringing back more information shortly. The action item for today is, of course, is to move forward with a letter of intent that we can tell CDE that we are interested, we have partners, and then we'll build that grant in more detail in the future. And so that will take any questions from the board.
Any questions? Yes. Director Maria.
First of all, this is super exciting, and I'm really glad that the Lewis Education Center is going to be used in this way. My only question is, and I saw Mike here from Via Esperanza earlier, but I think he left, and I'm just really curious to know if you know how they feel about this move and how realistic this timeline is for them.
They understand that they have to be moved. They like where they are, of course, but they're very flexible and they want to continue to be our partner. So we've had them come through 2 or 3 different times to move through it. Mike and the team and Marta and everyone has come by and looked at it, and they're excited for a couple of reasons. First of all, as part of CAP Sonoma, they like to be together. They like the idea of using their resources and bringing everyone together. The Via Esperanza room, they're very excited to have the child care, to have the parent education program operational, and then of course, they know they want to serve Pasitos and Avance. They have moved a lot. Marta articulated very clearly. They've moved around, and we don't know exactly what's going to happen a year away from now, but they've had a strong commitment, a strong partnership with us. They want to move forward, and the spaces that we're using for this year, they're very happy with.
I will say that as special educators, we're also excited about having these programs on the Lewis campus. The speech and language pathologists serve a lot of the students in Via Esperanza, Pasitos, and Avance.
I just have a follow-up question. So one of the really unique things about VIA is that it was co-located at Cook and made services really accessible to that community. So my question is, will there continue to be that kind of programming at Cook, or are those families now, if they want to continue, they have to go all the way to Lewis? So that's just, one of my concerns.
So one of the things as we were talking about this sort of transition that we didn't necessarily know was going to happen maybe 6 months ago is that a lot of the families that they're currently serving actually do drive. And one of the things that we did talk about too is that we purchased a van through some of the dollars through the fire relief for the wellness center that we also talked about being able to utilize for families who weren't able to commute over to the Lewis Center. But that being said, we do have maybe some other things in the works a year down the road to make sure that we can get back into that community, to go back and to be able to serve, because we know that there's a need there. So more to come on that.
I don't have any blue cards. Is there any further discussion? Director Sheffield.
I just want to say thank you for the presentation, and that this is a great collaboration, a great use of a site and the resources that are already there. I appreciate the timeline, and I can't imagine what, where you are on the cost, the total cost of something. Probably not there yet. I probably can't speak to it as it's still in sort of formulation stages.
Yeah, we uploaded a preliminary cost in January to look at this. It wasn't as complete as we had. It was only about 3 rooms, but that was a ballpark of about $600,000 then. We haven't had the detail work at it. Again, that was very ballpark. That kind of put us in the range of what we're partnering with Head Start. And then once Governor Newsom started proposing the money, we knew that would be an important piece to kind of put those things together. Right. So we have to wait for that, and obviously that'll take the summer and the more architect design to really look at the details. But we think there's a combination of facilities we already have, depends how we build them out. There's a 30% match we have to do, so we have to really look at all those things together.
Well, and then also incorporating the wellness center, which I also really love that idea. It could free up or open up opportunities to capture more dollars for the site. So I love this. Say good luck moving forward. And the timeline, I do appreciate that, laying it out, knowing that we're pushing into November this year to get this thing going, and it's really important. Do appreciate you adding that. Thank you.
Thank you.
I am super excited about this, and even though we're K-12, we all know, and especially our elementary teachers and principals know that that kindergarten readiness is huge, and that biggest bang for your buck in education investment is really 0 to 5. We know that, and so to have this kind of partnerships is really good. It's a great use for Lewis, which has been underutilized for so long. I love that now that I'm on the board, it's going to be called the Lewis Early Learning Center, and when I was in high school, it was called the Lewis Adult Education Center.
Comes around.
Save lots of us who miss credits for too many absences. So I think it's a good transition, then much more forward-looking. So it's really great. Thank you to First Five for that grant, and for your work to leverage that and to make the most of the site. And I do share Director Manieri's concerns around losing a program that's so well used and loved and effective in Southwest. And so, I'm glad you're thinking about that already, and that will be nice to check back in with about that.
Thank you.
It is an action item.
Move for the approval of item FA to letter of intent for request for application, California Department of Education Inclusive Early Education Expansion Program.
I second.
Moved by Director Sheffield, second by Director Manieri. Roll call vote, please.
Director Sheffield?
Aye.
Director Manieri? Director De La Cruz? Director Fong?
Aye.
Director McCormick?
Aye.
Director Medina?
Aye.
President Close?
Aye. Motion carries, and meeting adjourned.